Questioning Everything with Adam W. Episode 8.
Yeah, I'm stoked for consciousness because that's kind of part of the reason why I sent you that text when I had that fucking crazy sleep paralysis. It made me think about like, fuck, is that kind of what it's like for people that have had like serious head injuries or like strokes or whatever, and like they're still in there, but the connection to the limbs and everything isn't, but like your mind still has like the sensation of like, come on.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. No, and it'd be nice if we knew where that started and actual consciousness without being able to see somebody respond. You know, consciousness without response. Where does that stop, and where does like just complete non-consciousness come in? We don't really know, right? So we actually mentioned that earlier. I think it was podcast number 5, where I was talking about how consciousness is essentially a chemical byproduct, and we can tell that because if you manipulate certain parts of the brain, then people have different conscious experiences. You know, like the collection of senses that all combined we call sense awareness or consciousness on sense level, at least. You know, we can see it being chemical, and at that point Garrett said, yeah, but like, can you, or is the person just locked in their brain? You know, and at some point there's a line where that is a question. Where is that, you know, like, we don't have bell ringing, you know, for that. Like, you know, the bell ringers, people used to get buried alive because they would go into some kind of a paralysis, or they'd go into like a deep somnambulic stage or whatever it would be, and then get buried. And then so they started putting the ropes with the bells so that you could pull the rope and ring the bell if it turned out you're still alive. Yeah. But being buried or alive was a serious thing. Really was, right? Later, when vampires, people started exploiting people's belief in vampires, that was one of the things, is that when they'd exhume graves, if you were a grave exhumer, you'd notice a exactly scratching on the inside of the coffin.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, like, the fact that you'd notice that once is horribly creepy, but the fact that would be like prevalent enough that somebody's like, we got to put in a fucking string. We need a string with a bell so that you can actually tell people if you're still alive down there.
Isn't part of like the tradition of a wake similar story to that? Like, people would get so fucked up on booze that they would be like in like a comatose state for several days, so they would just leave them on the kitchen table or some shit.
Oh, I don't know.
Wait for them to wake up.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt. Yeah, no, it's pretty creepy. I hate to be the one to be picking out those bodies and being like, oh man, fuck, another one. Of course, at the time, it would have been like, oh shit, another vampire. Good thing that we had them under there, because, you know, they would have just kept on coming back otherwise.
Brutal.
Creepy. Okay, so I guess we've already officially started. So welcome everybody to the Questioning Everything podcast. I am your host, Adam W. And with me, I have Danny Jardeo.
Hi.
We are talking today about consciousness, which is a big, huge, ginormously stupid topic that has no end of branches. No end. Did you watch Sam Harris?
Yeah, I've kind of got into him a bit. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, his wife, she released a book on consciousness not too long ago, and I haven't read it, but I've seen some excerpts, and he's been talking about it and stuff. I mean, obviously, it'll be a hot topic forever, and it's always been a hot topic since the dawn of us realizing that we have a consciousness. It's pretty peculiar, you know. Any thoughts before we start?
I don't think consciousness the way we have it is limited to us. I don't know. I think like other animals, especially ones that have big frontal lobes, I think they have a similar consciousness to us. You know, they don't have to think about stuff like we do, like cars and airplanes and shit, because they're already taken care of in their environment. They're perfectly suited for it. They don't need all this extra shit. But it doesn't mean they don't have developed extra communications and able to tell stories and create culture and all kinds of shit.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh no, no doubt, no doubt. Well, we're mammals, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to forget that we're mammals, but we are definitely mammals still.
Yeah.
And yeah, other animals are going to have a lot of the same traits. In fact, it would be totally folly to associate. I agree to associate technology or even anything that comes after being able to speak, because once you start speaking as a human being, you're leaving everything else behind, and then the coordination that we have between members of our own species as a result of talking, right? And obviously
Definitely.
gives us this huge advantage. But as far as consciousness, I would have to wonder if there's moose who aren't like more conscious than some humans, right? Like the spectrum of humans and our self-awareness is so broad that there seems to be a gigantic overlap between us and lots of mammals insofar as consciousness. Just self-awareness, knowing that you're alive, knowing that there's other people that are alive or other things that are alive other than you, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, it's easy to forget we're mammals, but we are mammals.
Oh shit. What was it? I had like this stupid stoner thought the other day where I was just like, oh, if we evolved from something, I wonder if we're related to crabs at all. Turns out like something like 20 million years ago or whatever, we are. Like
way more than 20 million.
Yeah, way more. I don't know. I just pulled a number out of my ass.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but it's like the evidence is in like modern day like crustaceans like lobsters and crabs, like their brains work on serotonin just like ours do.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Well, as far as that goes, yeah, I'd imagine like all animalia are going to share certain body chemistry, things like that, right? Even then, like if they're arthropods or crustaceans or something like that, then the chemicals present are, you know, we're likely to share chemicals for sure. But we have common ancestors no matter what, no matter how far back they are. With a crab, I don't know how far back, because whales are 60 million.
Yeah.
Shrews, that's like 160 million or something like that. So yeah, that'd go back really far. Like that'd be like some of the earliest ass shit. Like earliest ass shit. Yeah. Same as octopuses. We split from octopuses really early.
Dude.
Yeah. Mollusks and crustaceans and mammals. But we still share similar features, right? That's the coevolution thing, where octopuses and our eyes are actually very similar. How we have lenses, and the lens gets flexed so that it can focus on different distances, planar distances, and they've got depth perception, and they've like very similar eye systems to us, and the eyes evolved totally differently. When we split, the eye was much simpler, and there's really no reason for both branches to go the same direction, because other things which also share the same ancestor didn't go in the same direction. But that's where it appears that they basically both formed because of a similar need. The need to be able to see in 3 dimensions as a predator was there. And so, yeah. Weird ass fucking shit, octopuses. Octopussies. More than just ninesomes.
Are there any animals that are just cyclops?
Cyclops?
Yeah, they just have like one light sensor.
Oh, probably like down in the darkest caves and shit, where they've got like the thing sticking out of their forehead, where it's like You know, the eyes are smoothed over. They no longer have eyeballs, where they've just got some forehead light thing. But look at
weird.
Yeah, but like lizards themselves have a third eye,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like the thorny dragons got their little third eye, and it's part of the evolution, right? Because again, as being mammals, we do come from the lizard, amphibious, and then lizard, and then mammal kind of pathway. So that's a part of our pineal gland, is a throwback to the like, see above you sensing organ that is eventually just became a light sensing organ.
Yeah.
Now it has no function, but it would be trippy if you like got a crack in your skull and suddenly everything seemed really, really bright.
Yeah. Well,
like if the light from the sun inside your skull.
I always thought, like, if you ever get dinged in the head or whatever, that spark that you like sensation, I always thought that was the pineal gland kind of being like,
You never know. I mean, or it could be like the whole ocular system just getting shaken, and once it's shaken, who knows? How does it create its voltage systems, and how does it, like, is there on any level where vibration equals a sense of voltage? Like,
I don't know, man. People get high on sound waves. Like, I remember like way back
high
in the 90s. Yeah, there was like this, I don't know what the culture is called, but I remember seeing like these news reports about them late at night. They were saying like they had to produce this kind of music, you'd need like military grade high voltage, high wattage, like whatever equipment in order to produce the tones and then to replay them. And then if you get I guess the theory is if you get the right frequencies, you can put yourself into like psychedelic trances and shit like that, and I guess probably get you in a real euphoric levitated mood. But apparently if you do it wrong, you can cook your insides. I don't know if it's cooked or more of just getting torn apart by high frequency.
Well, it could be, yeah. I mean, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other at that point. Depends on how.
Yeah, and it's bad for your eardrums too, for sure.
I would imagine. Yeah, like something that can hurt material objects on a large scale, right? Like there's things like glasses. You can smash glasses pretty easily, but smashing glasses, different than crushing your bones or destroying your. No doubt you could use frequency to do physical harm. No doubt, but. Get high? Never thought of it. Never crossed my mind.
Well, what's that thing back in the 60s or the 70s? Like you put a light inside of you put a tube of paper around it, and then there's like slits in it, and you just stare at it for like hours or whatever. I don't know.
Oh yeah. And then it casts this thing on the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. Things they made in the 70s, 60s, and 70s for people that get really fucking high. Lava lamps and yeah. No, my dad had something like that spun, and it actually created like a really cool pattern too. But
that's dope.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
No, consciousness is a big subject, and I guess it just depends on how boring we want to get. We probably don't want to get too boring, but at some point, how
loosey-goosey am I allowed to get?
What does that mean?
I don't know. If I start talking about like spiritual connotations or whatever.
It's consciousness, so I don't know if there's any rules.
Cool.
Obviously we have to be able to come to terms with whatever it is we're talking about, and the main problem with communication that exists is that it requires unity on both sides.
Yeah.
Right. So
yeah.
It's almost easier to just like talk. If a person just like thinks of the world as just some open canvas and you just talk, but if you're going to actually communicate something, then then it has to be communicable and relevant. And so that's it. Sure. That's it, right? Like, we could easily waffle about some spiritual ideas or something like that are so subjective that literally nobody can relate to what you're talking about. I don't think that you're going to go there, but
no, that's not. No,
it's not. At that point, it's not useful. But a lot of the things, that we look at on the Questioning Everything podcast are either subjective, or they're not even necessarily directly subjective, but they're going to have all sorts of weird ass shit. Like, I mean, I can't even think of something more strange than consciousness. Consciousness is right up there with water. I said this on a previous podcast. Water is the most interesting molecule in the universe, and consciousness is the most interesting principle of material, and it's a principle of material.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's an emergent principle of material that specific things, very material things, have. Like, as much as we like to imagine that it's some fucking, soul, spirit, astral bullshit or something like that, it really is animals talking. Animals saying, wow, I'm an animal. Look, check this out, I'm an animal. Yeah. Realizing that there's other animals, realizing that the things that have fed them and have cared for them and have protected them, they're also animals, and that their family group is animals, and they're all individuals, and then realizing that there's a sense of cooperation, right? Yeah. I mean, that's really that's the nutshell of the human path of consciousness.
Yeah.
Right. I exist. Oh, those other people that I know, that's my family, they exist as well. Hey, we can work together to create a better world.
Yeah.
Right.
Or at least a little pocket of it.
Yeah, that's the Cole's Notes. That's like maybe even the Bob Ross version. But yeah.
Dude.
I gave that as an example on Facebook, is that when you first learn something, you have the textbook version of it, and it's really sharp in your mind, and then after a few years you kind of get the Cole's Notes version, where it's like, you kind of remember a bit of it, and then and by the end all you have is the Bob Ross version, where you can remember it, how it looks. You can remember it as an image, as a painting, but that's still remarkably useful. The devil's in the detail, but the true understanding of a thing is in its full picture. So I've actually got notes on consciousness too.
Yeah. Spark a note.
Which sucks. When I pull out notes, it's like, all right. Okay, so I think one of the first things about consciousness is, like, even outside of notes. You watched the cast already too, just insofar as to catch up with what we've already established, and I believe belief versus probability had quite a bit of stuff on it, and then number 2 as well, and number 1. Consciousness just keeps coming up constantly, right?
Yeah. And, well, consciousness is everything that we experience.
Well, yeah. At least it comes through our consciousness, for sure.
Yeah,
it comes through our consciousness. But a lot of people think that consciousness is literally everything. That the root of reality itself is consciousness. And that's a fundamentally interesting idea that then branches off into a couple sub ideas. One being that you've got like this traversing infinity soul, where consciousness is the story of a soul that traverses infinity. And then you've got I forgot what the fuck I was talking about.
Would the other one be like a more atheistic kind of a spirit?
This is why you don't get high before podcasts, people. Holy fuck. I've never done a podcast without getting high first. And it's always like, what was I saying? What was that word?
You said spirit that was infinitely traveling was the first one.
Yeah. No, it's the two different branches of ideologies that I was trying to go for, but I ended up losing it. And you know what? I could have faked it. And I could have let this shit sail through, but I threw a wrench into it, and that was probably dumb, but whatever. No, it's this. The thing is that the perspective can have room to play. Like I can take the same perspective and go, okay, I can see a world like that. And then somebody else will take the perspective and be like, yeah, it's about a reincarnating soul. And I'm like, no, it's not. And then funny enough, it really is hard. Like these mind worms, once they get in, like, oh, it's a soul traversing infinity and reincarnating into different bodies. Once that gets in there, it pushes out all the reasonable thinking. And it's just like, fuck, now I got to fucking sit here for 5 minutes again and remember what I was thinking about. That's not necessarily reasonable, but it's not intangible but yeah, no. Shared stories, I guess. Again, you can say the same thing to two people and they both have a completely different perception of it. So the story's infinitely retellable.
Yeah, well, it's the one. It's just like the story that they always write in the movies, the hero story. It's always like there's a hero. He's got a problem. He's got a love interest. He's got to do stuff. Oh, he fails. He falls. He's gonna give up. But something comes and brings him back, and then he saves the day, or whatever, right?
The old trope.
Yeah.
The archetype trope.
Everyone likes to bang their favorite song, whatever gets them there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, in the other podcast, we had established that, or at least I tried to, I could be entirely in error, but I don't think I am, that consciousness is actually formed and established in the brain during the natal period when you're a fetus, and that the brain wouldn't have any real connection to the body otherwise, but as the body's forming, different muscles are firing, and they just fire randomly, and eventually the brain, as the brain's recording the firing, has a neural pathway to reverse engineers it essentially and creates a neural pathway for control. So everything that occurs, or everything that we have control over, everything that we're conscious of in our brain is something that we've been exposed to. And anything that we've not been exposed to, we will simply not be consciously aware of within our body. Right? And then there's processes, obviously physiological processes that we ignore, that we don't have any control over, and the body never, for whatever reason, never attempts to gain consciousness over it. Organ processes, breathing, blinking, things that were not a benefit to us to be conscious of at all, which really, again, goes back to evolutionary biology. That seems to be the reason why we're conscious of what we are and not conscious of what we're not conscious of, because of whether or not there was a need to be, passing stuff on. No. But that begs the question then, what about our human experience can a person stumble on, or can randomly occur, or can fire or misfire or accidentally fire, that can lead a human then to different states of consciousness, right? Because when we talk about consciousness, a lizard has consciousness. Like, it's got sense awareness, right?
Yeah.
A plant probably doesn't have sense awareness like smell and taste and touch and hear and sight, sound, Plants don't have that. They have very, very, very simple chemical senses where it's not even really a sense. It's more like a reaction, where if they contact a chemical in their root or their leaf, then there's another reaction that proceeds after, right? At no point, like, sniff or, taste the air, and they don't taste this direction and then that direction to triangulate within the three-dimensional environment where their food source is or anything like that, but a lizard will. That's far more complex version of consciousness, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But it still continues. It gets bigger than lizards, because now we get into mammals like us, like we said, and we have two people talking about their own consciousness on a podcast. Right? So the progress from lizard to talking about it on a podcast is a pretty big leap, and I think that we could probably actually discover more about consciousness as a species if people really look at these changes, these very, very basic changes, and not only in very specific senses, but in structures of senses, which is what we're left with as a human, where not only do we have a very simple sense organ that allows us to observe the environment and then react to it, we have these very complicated sense structures or relationship structures, really, where we have relationships in our mind. We relate things to things, and we create these large complex structures that have many layers of self and sense awareness, not sense in the body sense, but sense in the projected intent, the emotion, the passion,
Yeah, pretty much what like the small version people call like their what the fuck, their narrative, right? Like all of their belief systems, all of the relationships, what they attach ideas to, and when they see certain behaviors, it triggers things inside of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
No, I mean, like, there's so much involved that we could probably literally talk about it. We could go through 4 lifetimes just naming this stuff. But I suppose when it comes down to something like consciousness, because we can't see it, we can't really observe it, we almost have to push it into some sand, and then we can look at the imprint,
yeah.
Like that's about the best thing, or shine a light on it and see what kind of shadow it makes.
I think that's what they're kind of doing right now with the Elon Musk thing, the neural net or whatever. And then there's an
Lord fucking knows, right?
beep 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 beep.
That's
all they're getting.
Yeah, I think that what that's going to come down to is a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah. You can't just stick a probe in a brain and expect it to see and understand the whole computer process or whatever's going on in there.
No. There's no port.
There's a less invasive technique. I can't remember what the guy's company is called, but it's just a unit you wear on top of your head, and it just looks at the light signatures being given off, I guess, whenever you're thinking about something or whatever. Yeah, I can't remember what it was called, but it's he was on Lex Friedman or like not too long ago.
Yeah. I don't know. It seems like kind of a sum like where a lot of people think that if you were to take the weight of human molecules, and then put the weight of human molecules in the same aggregate fashion, maybe even in the same array together in a different area, you're going to be able to have a human. Mm-hmm. We are more than the sum of our parts, and it's the more than the sum of our parts that's the squirrely part, and it's the part that you can't replace, and it's the part that you can't. It's when we talk about cloning. You know, like, well, are you gonna can you clone a personality?
Oh.
And you can snapshot. You can snapshot stuff. So if you were to take a clone of you at this point in your life, you'd have a snapshot of you at that point in your life, but all it takes is another moment. Like by the time the clone was grown, you'd be like, oh, fuck, not that guy. You know, because you would have moved on from that. It's like reading some old poetry or some shit, right? You'd be like, oh, fuck, I was such an idiot back then.
Yeah.
Really, because, and that's what it would be. And the clone would move on because you'd never be the same person in two bodies being like, oh, this is weird. Oh, this is weird. I'm in two bodies. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just not going to happen. Consciousness is a product of the fact that you have this fat bag of water that happens to be configured a certain way. Right? Change the way it's configured and you change the consciousness. And, you know, it's so precarious and it's all so absolutely dependent on idealism, physical and material idealism, that it's really funny. Like, I come from the perspective of spirituality in religion.
Right.
I'm a hippie.
Yeah.
So I come from the perspective of, like, my roots are Hindu and Buddhist. You are a soul. You traverse through the multiverse and the dimensions, and you know, you reincarnate. That's really is my root, but you know, I have since definitely divested from that path, and I forgot what the fuck I was talking about.
I was going to interject. I was going to let you go, but isn't pretty much all religion starts from Hinduism? Like all of the Western religion? Kinda,
yeah. Before Hinduism, there's the Proto-Indian Iranian religion, and you'd have to say that would have highly influenced everything prior to Hinduism. Hinduism would have been influenced from that, and then obviously you've got the Mesopotamian Chaldean type lore that is really kind of surprisingly different than the Proto-Indian Iranian. But the Proto-Indian Iranian is like very similar to the very earliest form of Hinduism as well, because that's kind of what it grows from. Yeah. And then, the Greeks were definitely, the Greeks were like Egyptian mythos, and the Egyptian mythos is inspired by the Mesopotamian. So then it gets handed over to the Greeks, but then the Greeks absolutely ramfuck it with Hinduism. Like Greece mythology is essentially Egyptian mythology meets Indian mythology, right? And then the Greek philosophers like backdoored Hindus and stole their shit. the Greek philosophy and Greek stuff is so much reinventing Hindu ideas and rebranding them, but then they improved on them too, right? So like the Hindus were great, but there was very, very little progress, right? I suppose that's probably one of the benefits of it, is that there's little progress, but they were there for a very long time talking about the same shit. And then Greece, they took it and they changed it and made it more sophisticated, made it more complicated, right? Same as like, it's kind of like the Buddhists, because Buddhism arises after Hinduism, way after. Yeah. And Gautama, he lived in a Hindu culture. His people were Hindu. And so he branched out of there and grew off of it and created a system that inspired further people down the road to create some really, really good ass fucking philosophy that merges into science, right? Like with the Nadi, the Nadi is like this is the kind of the evolution of human consciousness as a system or an infrastructure goes from the simple line with 7 dots on it, which is Hinduism and the Hindu chakra system. And then it gets split, and then they understand that there's actually duality being involved. It gets split by the Jewish Kabbalists into the tree of life, because now you start up to apply things like the Merkaba, which is like great geometry. Like, but now you're taking the line of chakras from the Hindus, and you're applying it in 3 dimensions, and saying, okay, well, that's in 3 dimensions. This is actually the way it looks like.
Star David.
Yeah, absolutely. The star tetrahedron, and then after that, it evolves even further to the Tibetans, who are just fucking Jedis. Like, Tibetans, if anything pisses me off about the fucking modern world and people invading anybody, you do whatever you want to the Uyghur Muslims. Keep your fucking hands off the Tibetans. Like, sell organs, eat babies, do whatever the fuck you want, but you just keep your hands off the Tibetans, okay? Because those are like the world's most interesting people.
Yeah.
And they have the Nadi system, which is kind of like the same thing as the chakra or the Sephiroth, but now you've got 300,000. Right? Yeah. I don't agree with a lot of the interpretive ideas. Like, there's a lot of things in Zen Buddhism, the deeper you go, where it's much like Reiki or something. It gets ludicrous very quickly, where people start to merge ideas of like electromagnetism and ideas of start to merge a bunch of bullshit into the same pot, and then think, like, oh, this has got to go this direction, and there's a spin on here, that a whole bunch of overcomplicated nonsense that doesn't fucking mean anything. But before the Western moronic people get involved, it's actually a significant feat to be able to understand our senses to the point where you can start to formulate how the senses are being produced, and understanding that organs are part of our sense system and are part of our psychological system, part of our feelings. Like when you feel like you suddenly get really scared of something and you have a bad feeling.
Yeah.
There's organs, there's biochemistry involved.
Yeah.
And then so there's this temptation to start looking at everything as a nail if you're a hammer, but when you break it down, there's a chemical perspective, there's an electromagnetic perspective, there's a nervous system perspective. It really does fit into all these things. Like, you got a butterfly in your stomach, and because you're scared.
Yeah.
And now you've got an external something that's occurring that you're scared of, that's now creating like it's ramping up the endogenous bile production in your pancreas, that's then going to flood into your lower intestinal system, that's then going to trigger your vagus nerve, that's going to fucking trigger it all the way up. You're going to feel it in your chest, you're going to feel it and then you're going to get really, really scared. And this is all just, like the series of biochemical reactions, as well as electromagnetic reactions, as well as, so you start breaking down the system, and we are this just gigantic full system where we've got multiple parts that are working in tandem. Sometimes they work harmoniously. Sometimes there's like impedances or like dissonances, or, they're not resonating well. Sometimes they're, and, people trying to figure this shit out.
Yeah.
It's like astrology, but astrology, when they first started saying, hey, listen, there's weird stuff that happens in the world. Oh, we also noticed that the planets change constantly. I wonder if there's a relationship. When they first thought that was a good thinking, but they only used a very, very short period of time. There's a very short period of time where records were kept that say this happened during this astrological this configuration.
Yeah.
Right. And it was very short lived. So now, even if you're interested in astrology, you can learn all the math, you can learn all the stuff, but when it comes right down to it, the body of data that says that this can be associated with that is tiny. People gave up really, really early on recording any astrological data. They just gave up, right? Or we don't have it because the Library of Alexandria was burned down, and the records of the data keeping and all these temples and ziggurats through Mesopotamia are gone, or something. So we don't have them, right? All we have now is like some person who's like, oh, this is what it means. It means that you should be really open-minded when you're doing business deals this week because, but how do they get from astrological math to these interpretations where now they can tell you what you need to do? There's a huge hole in that. There's a gigantic gap of data.
It's just a con so people can snoop you out of a couple of bucks.
It really is a con, right? Whereas when it comes down to how does the Sephiroth affect your human experience, they're way, way, way more nailed. They're far more
what was
more attentive to data.
I can't remember if it's Chinese or not, but there's this device. It looks like a times table, but it's got a whole bunch of characters or whatever, and it's supposed to like be very accurate at calculating. I can't remember if it was like the weather or whatever. I think it's called the Wei Ching or something like that.
The I Ching? Yi Ching?
Yeah, that's probably what I'm thinking.
Fucking love the I Ching, man.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan. I was actually talking about the I Ching recently because a friend had compared it. I was talking about astrology, bitching about it because.
What about this thing?
Heads up, it's a topic coming up. But I was bitching about it and how lame it is, and somebody associated the I Ching to it.
Yeah.
And I had to say, like, for me, everything's different. Astrology I've looked into really, really, really deeply to the point where I feel like I can say what I have to say about astrology because I feel like I've lifted every rock and looked under it. There's not everything I can say that for, but the I Ching is again something that I can say I've lifted enough rocks on the I Ching and I've given it as much as thorough as I need it to be. And where I say drop the astrology, don't worry about it. Like, look at it. Look at the houses. Look at the math. The best thing about astrology is the relationship between the geometric positions. That's the best thing. Yeah. That's the best. Whereas with I Ching, now you're starting to get into a completely different set of mathematics. You're getting into just a different way of looking at things. Rather than being 12-sided, or whatever you want to call it, it's 8. So the focus is 8s. It's all about 8s and 64s, and just the way that it's put together, I think, is a form of cross training, I guess you could say, for other things, for looking at other things. It's got value. If you want to use it as a divining tool, whatever, like if you're going to use something as a divining tool, nothing I can say will ever change your mind. And
that's like another throwback.
Yeah.
What's it called? Is it synchronicity or chaos?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
whatever gets you there.
Absolutely. Yeah. But as a tool of just learning and exploring and finding out about other cultures, I Ching is seriously good. I mean, I'm a big fan of ancient China. So I'm hypercritical about modern day China and the Communist Party, but I'm actually really quite fond of ancient China and the I Ching and, Sun Tzu, the art of war. Love it. Same as Japanese culture. I really like ancient Japanese culture. I find it fascinating. Modern Japanese culture, I don't like. I don't think that they're keeping up. I think that they're bigoted and patriarchal and sexist and but
would you feel like the ancient East Asias, would they be more stoic, or do you think they would have more emotion? stoic? Be more stoic, or
Yeah.
more,
Yeah.
or were they?
What's the word with the word stoic? Fucking Garrett used to bring up that word. I'm like, honestly, I don't even know what stoicism means.
Well, I'm kind of saying it to describe like a calm demeanor and don't show too much emotion. And I would assume, to not as a first line of defense of not escalating a random occurrence with anyone, right? Because everyone's polite, but not. I don't know. No one wants to fight.
I think ancient Asia was very hardcore.
Yeah, you think people were
Very
fucking each other up?
I think it was very, very hardcore. I think it was very competitive. I think the relationship between Asian countries at this time are indicative of that. Koreans are very, very judgmental against Japanese and Chinese and Thai and Burmese, and Chinese are very judgmental against Japanese and Koreans, and everybody seems to believe that everybody else is somehow not as good as they are. And there's strong competitiveness. People in China live in such a competitive society that they expect to get screwed by each other, right?
Even their own family.
I don't know about that, but it's just you're more likely to get screwed. You're more likely to get people are it's just harder. You get more people and less resources and stuff like that happens.
Yeah,
right?
so it's a population density thing. There's too many fish in the pond.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, like once you start stepping into the water of is there any sort of ethnic difference or something, then I'd have to say no. If you were to put any other genetic allele combinations of people in their circumstances, I think they're going to act for exactly the same.
Yeah.
But it's very, very, very harsh. I'd say the ancient part of pretty much every society is pretty harsh, though.
Yeah.
What differs us is how many generations of comfort have you had? That's really what differs us. Because we've had multiple generations of comfort and ease and cooperation, and when somebody comes into the game and they're a newcomer, like all of Asia's, they're way more historically technologically advanced than we are. They're than Europeans were, for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You go back, they're figuring out math and engineering and all that sort of shit. Well, people in Europe are like fucking banging stones together. Right.
Yeah.
The Chinese and the Japanese and the Indian culture, and they're all way older, way doing way more. But as time goes on, everybody kind of just like takes the lead and everything like that. And when it comes to having our post-Roman civilizations, where not only are we post-Roman at this point, but we're also post-colonialism. And post-colonial society is like, Rome was cushy, post-Roman society was cushier, and then now post-colonialism is like, we got washer dryer in our house, we got a dishwasher in our house, we got toilets and showers, we got bath, shower, and toilet in like every house, plus a washer dryer, plus a dishwasher, plus a fucking 2-car garage, right? This is post-colonialism. We wouldn't have washers and dryers. We wouldn't have this stuff. This is all as a result of North America being occupied. Hundreds of millions of people, booming, populations growing, and people seeking comfort and convenience. But that's not something that this has been traditional in history. And when it comes to East Asia, they're not catching up at the same rate. They haven't been on the same path, right? So they're still fucking struggling. Like, I don't know if you've seen shit like the gutter oil.
Oh,
people in Chinese cities digging.
Yeah, they. Oh yeah.
Pulling out buckets of sewage
and then filtering
stuff.
it and selling it back to the street vendors.
Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah. Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
So that's struggle. And if you're going to be, if you're going to be sad, then be sad for them, because that is some serious ass struggle. When you have to do that, when you have to use that, when you have to, yeah, too many people and not enough resources, and in their case, obviously, a really fucked up system of government. But depends on who you ask, because I talk to people all day on Facebook that given them a moment of opportunity, they would adopt the exact same value systems as China.
Yeah.
Because that's just what they extol, that's what they talk about, that's what they want, or they think they want. They just don't think things through, obviously. They just, it gets about a second into the thought and then it turns into a meme or something. But, given the opportunity, we'd be fucked too.
Yeah.
Which is how it happened in the first place. The people didn't get overtaken. They didn't get overthrown. They got convinced. That's what's going to happen if we ever adopt communism. It'll be in the form of technocracy, and it will be something that people want. It's not going to be imposed.
Yeah. Is technocracy the rich rule everything?
No. Technocracy is the most qualified person to make any decision makes it, essentially.
Yeah. But fuck democracy. Have a latocracy or whatever. Have do it like the Greeks did. Have like whoever was the last faction in power chooses the pool that the lottery is taken from.
It's basically what we live in now.
Yeah.
Well, basically, right? If you want to vote for a liberal or you want to vote for a conservative, you have to wait for the party to choose who it is you're going to be able to vote for.
Yeah. Well,
literally, our federal politicians are picked by the party, right?
Well, they should be picking the best of the best.
They should be, but they don't. They pick the person who is told by them, by their funders, probably. Whoever's given them the most money has their pick, and whoever's given them the most money is probably pretty influential on who ends up getting picked. With technocracy, there's no more democracy. You don't have to worry about voting for people because you go through the academic system. If you're talking about vaccines, then again, the virologists are the people who know the most. If you're talking about whether our buildings should be built with a particular spec of earthquake proofing, because that's what governments do, is they decide stuff like that. Should we cause companies to spend more money to reach this level of earthquake proofing because of the area or not? That's when you bring in a specialist, an expert, and say, can it? Now, with the system that we have today, you have a democratically elected individual who can be replaced if you don't like them. And they then bring in experts, and then they have to make a decision, right? In technocracy, there would just simply be no politician, and the expert would be summoned by a council or something, and then that would be it. That would be the thing. So insofar as efficiency is concerned, it's like totally efficient, right? Like if I had to argue for technocracy in a debate, I wouldn't have any problem at all. Right? Like it's a simple, it's a no-brainer that technocracy is better than democracy.
Yeah.
It's simple.
Yeah.
Very, very, very simple.
No matter what, everyone's going to be unhappy about something and things are still going to move forward. So this is the best we got.
Well, you start to unpack it though, right? So yeah, technocracy, like if you want to, people can't afford medical. So a technocrat's like, these are the services that have to be free. People are happy. In technocracy, I think people would generally be happy for the vast majority of the time.
Yeah.
The question then comes in is what decisions or what ability to make decisions for themselves do the people lose because there's actually an efficiency to consider. Right?
Well, how involved are they with the runnings of the country at large?
Well, I'm just saying if we replace democracy with technocracy, then it's way more efficient. We don't have to get, there's no middleman between an expert and the solution and, getting it done. Whereas right now you have to go through the politician who can then also get bribed and impede progress, perhaps. With technocracy, you look at the roads, say, for instance. You say, should we be spending money on new roads? A technocrat comes in and says, listen, we did the math and we found that there's 20 minutes less wait between 2 kilometers of distance if we add these 2 corridors because they seem to connect everything, right? I mean, fact is, we could then use machine learning to start to crunch numbers and to calculate things and go, oh, okay, so the machine learning, the math literally says that this is the best decision. Why do we need a fucking politician?
Yeah.
Why? Like, why would we need a politician running our lives when we can use math and AI and experts to tell us, like, what do we do? Well, let's ask the fucking expert. Let's ask the climatologist, what do we do, right? And if they're a doorknob, then we can pin them. Like if they're like, oh, well, the water's probably going to go up by 3 feet if we do that. We can remind them that the water's never gone up. And that they're just simply going to ruin their reputation if they fucking talk like a globalist fangirl, because we have access to the ocean and we can see that it's not going up.
Earth wants plastic. Earth wants plastic. Earth wants plastic.
Yeah. Well, plastic's good. Plastic's good, right?
Dude, it's already starting to become part of everything. It's in everything we eat. You know what? It's literally part of the evolution, because one way or another, human beings are going to start using life sustaining mechanisms, and it's going to start off as first being what's the word called? Not kink. What's the word when something that arouses you the most? What's that thing called?
Attractive?
No. Doesn't matter. But anyway,
grannies with nipple rings. Wait, what?
It's gonna be another thing people are addicted to, is trying to stay alive as long as possible. So there's definitely going to be organs being replaced by mechanical things. People are going to slowly start morphing with technology one way or another, either exoskeleton or inner. So why wouldn't the body you want to start turning it into a more plastic, silicone based integrated thing? Since you're already going to be doing that with a knife and scalpel, you might as well do it chemically too. Maybe somewhere it's going to start bonding and people are literally going to start growing plastic things that they can surgically start porting you. And then it's just like, yeah.
Why not, right? Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd love to live another 1,000 years just to see how people fuck around with the genes, because you'd think too, like the idea of plastic, first of all, is the term plastic could be applied to so many things. It's not necessarily a petrochemical. Right.
Yeah. No, it's a state, right?
There's tons of organic plastics, tons of, and you could even consider our skin like a kind of plastic, right? Mm. Where perhaps with something like the skin, like how we have collagen, and then we also have these like keratin things that grow on our skin.
That's from the crabs we evolved from.
Yeah, exactly. But could we genetically modify people to literally thicken their skin, or to create less plasticization of the skin? Because right now our skin is so plastic that it's actually really weak.
Yeah.
Plasticizers generally soften a material, right? So, I mean, is the skin enough of something like a plastic for us to be able to use our understanding of plastics with genetic modification to create armor? That would be fucking awesome. I want armor, dude. Of course, you wouldn't be able to like give yourself armor, but you might be able to give a human armor.
I'm pretty sure part of the planning to go to space, like Mars or whatever, they're thinking about the idea of surgically enhancing bones with like carbon fiber type of things. They're probably like carbon titanium bullshits
Hmm.
because like the difference in gravity, like Mars is smaller than Earth, right?
Yeah.
So you're gonna be lighter. So you're gonna be like what's people with like that are like really tall, they die soon because their bodies are just so big that I don't know, they usually end up having some kind of like weird organ health issues or something.
Encephalitis or no,
I
that's
don't
not
know.
it.
I just remember like all of the in the textbooks, all of like the really big, like tall people. I don't know if it was gigantism or whatever, but
I don't know.
yeah,
I've got a good friend whose son has a genetic difference, and he's like a really big boy. He's like big boy at like 12 years old. I'm not sure if
wow.
that's it, but that one's a really rare 47 chromosomes, I believe, is the cause of it.
Wow.
I'm not sure what the other chromosome does, but to
Makes
anybody,
you fucking back.
yeah, and I mean to anybody else, he's just a very well-developed fella, right?
Yeah.
To him and to his parents, they probably you know the details
Yeah.
of the human experience, but to everybody else, he's just a super sweet big dude.
That's awesome.
But yeah, now we can understand that stuff, right? It's fucking
Yeah.
genetics.
Yeah, genetics are wild, man.
But yeah. And is DNA conscious? That's another big question that nobody asks because it's a dumb question. But I ask it because, DNA has got this real squirrely fucking way of making things that are conscious.
Yeah.
It really does, right?
Yeah.
And if it's not conscious, then is it like the sperm of consciousness? Really? Because what does it make? It makes things that, at the very least, are self-aware in the form of sense awareness. DNA produces self-aware creatures, whether or not it's the most remedial form, which is a plant, which plants are like, to say a plant is self-aware is a huge stretch of self-awareness when you really start getting into the hammering it out. But, it'll respond to stuff. And if you put two plants beside each other and you stress one out, the one beside it can respond as well. Not because it's conscious or anything, but because of the fucking chemical reactions. But, up from there, DNA starts producing things that have senses and things that have feedback loops that ultimately create self-awareness.
Right.
So is DNA itself self-aware? What the actual fuck?
I don't know. I think because like I know very little about chemistry and biology, but maybe it would be easier to think about it closer to something like the game of life, like the little like if you let that thing run forever, could you call that thing conscious and aware? Like, could DNA just be like perfectly captured information that it doesn't need to be aware? It just needs to be, in the right environment for it to do its thing and meet what it needs to meet to make what it needs to make, and that's it. That's all. Like, it's just more mechanical and just autopilot.
Yeah. Yeah. No, the game of life, just in case anybody's not familiar, we're not talking about the Hasbro or whatever the hell. You can be a winner at the game of life. No, it's actually a series of differential equations fed into a graphical system that, shows you cool stuff. One of my favorite things, and if anybody's not familiar with it, then they should be, is the logic differential equation. And the logic differential equation is the dummy's best way of looking at this type of shit, where you can take any number and double it, right? But there's a couple rules. So if you want to start taking a number, take a single digit, and then you're stuck on the single digit the whole time, right? So you have to reduce it. You don't add the two numbers together. You just drop the number furthest left, right? So you start with 4, you double it to 8. Now you double it to 16, which turns into 6. Now you double it to 12, which turns into 2. Now you double it to 4. Now you double it to 8. Now you double it to 16, which turns into 6, So if you do this, then obviously once you get to the 4, it starts to cycle. It goes from 4 to 8 to 16 to 12, back to 4. If you do then all of the numbers, then some numbers take longer before they step into a cycle. Now, if you add 2 digits, it starts to get more interesting. 3 digits, it gets even more interesting, right? At 3 digits, you end up having sometimes really long chains of numbers before you start to get into the loop, right? And if you map all this out into graph paper, then you end up having the same sort of differential, parabolas as you'd have with any other differential equation. But these are just really simple ways of creating. It's just a simple rule that once you throw a number in, you can start to look for numbers that never end, right? And a number that will never end just creates a pattern, like a parabola or like a waveform. Whereas almost every single number you'll come across just goes into a circle. And once it's in a circle, like it'll be a cool shape into a circle, done. The number's toast, right? Have you ever done those differential formulas?
Oh.
No?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
I don't math too hard. I watch other people do math and I go, explain it to me. Okay, good enough.
Really? That's funny because you talk about math more than a lot of people I know. So I assume that you're like doing math more.
No, I probably should, but I got really lazy in high school, and when it came to like learning it and doing my assignments or whatever, I handed it in, and as soon as I graduated, I forgot everything. So whenever I see like people like reducing equations down, I forget the steps. Like I inherently know because I remember kind of vaguely from like the instruction, but I'm like, oh, I need someone to like be like, nope, you did that the wrong way. Nope. Like I'd need like 2 or 3 weeks, and I've just never been like that interested enough to practice, which I should, because then it would help me with my intuitive thinking, and that's I think that's the funny thing is I think you're a lot further along than most people. At least insofar as being like, oh, well, that sounds like blah. At least from what we've been talking about recently, and more grounded in the math, because the math for me is really, really difficult for some things. Like I've been telling Danny about this idea that came across my head. I had a migraine for 3 days, and this idea nailed me. It's a really cool model that I was trying to attempt to understand at the moment how regular dimension stuff can produce the appearance of multiple dimensions. And that ended up leading me back to like really, really, really super primitive, very basic constructs of what a dimension itself is, and how then the pieces can be put together in order to create these illusions of complexity, right? And we're both into like things like the game of life, and you're familiar with cellular automata, right? Stephen Wolfram? A little bit,
yeah.
Like, is that like, are you talking about like microtubules and such?
Not really. Maybe. I mean, I'm familiar with microtubules from cytology and biology, where they're just basically connecting the nuclei of the cells.
Yeah.
And they're really interesting because they have they have like what appears to be faster than light communication, right?
Yeah.
Because of basically being able to bypass the distance by having the same thing connected at 2 points. Essentially, it's not rocket science. It seems like when you look at it, it seems like it's like, whoa, this is being really trippy, and people use words like quanta and shit like that, and it's not really. I mean, it's like you know, the fact that you can stretch your arm out here and stretch your arm out here and touch two things at the same time is about as trippy as it really is, right? But at any rate, is that what you mean by tubular?
Yeah, yeah.
Because the Stephen Wolfram, he created, well, he didn't create, actually, I think he just borrowed it, but the cellular automata where you've got just like the tic-tac, and then there's a rule, if you want to place another tic-tac, you can only place one up and to the right. And then if there's already one there, then you have to skip it and go up to the left one or something.
It's kind of like the game of Go.
Yeah, and it creates patterns, though.
Okay.
It's like more like the game of life where you put in this very simple mathematical rule set. And like one rule set creates very simple things. 2 rule sets creates more complicated things. You end up getting the like 6 rule sets, and then now you have these like really wild fractal patterns that are perceptibly infinite. If they're not infinite, then you're never going to get to the end of it, right? Which infinite numbers are obviously pretty squirrely and fascinating to.
So couldn't that be maybe an attempt to describe what the multiple dimensions, the ones that are higher than 4, are existing? Maybe they're just, dimensions of frequencies that need to be there so that the perceivable reality can be perceivable.
Maybe, but we just can't see them, right? So if we can't see them, then as far as an axiom goes, we probably shouldn't assume that they're there.
Right.
So that's where my axiom is: assuming that they're not there, assuming that 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time is all we get. How does it work? Right? Like, then that's the same thing as when you go into the 2-dimensional stuff, like with a spinor. How do you get a spinor to do what it's going to do within 2 dimensions? But in 1930, they didn't have a problem with it. Figured it out. It's only in modern day that people have a huge problem with it, and it's because they're trying to fix it into a 3-dimensional manifold, into a 3-dimensional system, which, in my opinion, is silly, but that's just one part of the perspective, I suppose, is that things only apply within the boundaries that they exist within. And if you find a bigger boundary, you can't just start trying to get things that don't exist within it to apply, right?
Yeah.
It's just how it is.
Yeah, because then you get like stupid guys like me being like, well, then maybe everything is flat and it's just projected to be 3-dimensional through, consciousness. Maybe that's part of the reason why we have to have binocular vision to create the sense of 3D that might not actually be there.
No, that's a reasonable enough idea, though, right? That's a reasonable enough idea. That's like the notion that what you're looking at before you looked at it was not necessarily
there. Yeah, which brings back the same.
By looking at it, you are taking a series of potentials. By looking at it, you're taking mathematics that doesn't necessarily have to have an answer, and you need an answer. So once you look at it, that answer's made, and that's the simple split, the split double slit test. Sorry, right?
Yeah.
Where you observe the electron, and now it no longer acts like a wave; it starts acting like a particle. But it's, all the hippie shit aside, it's the function of interfacing with something, and the contact forces a relationship with it, and that contact forces some kind of an exchange, and that exchange itself reduces the potential and creates an is, right?
Yeah.
Turns a maybe into an is.
Yeah. And when you're, all alone, it's just yours. But then when you got a buddy, now you two are both on the same reality. You're in the same consciousness. You guys are sharing consciousness now, especially if there's a conversation going. Right?
Oh yeah. That would be nice to be able to explore, is where people do start to share levels of consciousness.
Yeah.
And when they do, right? I don't think that it's one of those things that one of many things that if you were to put into a lab, it'll break. You can't put that in a lab because there's no means by which to study it. When things like that happen between people, it's a unique thing that those two people have to be there for. Right?
That's right.
In order for it to happen, because it's a lot of chemistry, more than just you are a bag of fat with water. The two people have to jive. They have to be on the same level. They have to be on the same wavelength. They have to be, and then things can proceed. So it's much like anything else, to do with the human experience or human psychology, is we have to pull out the idea of microscopes, and we can use things like MRIs or brain scans of whatever kind to be able to sometimes associate some things to empirical data. But for the most part, if two human beings are required, and if each other getting along is also required, and if them having things in common is also required, and if one of them being gassy will fuck it up because he's in a bad mood, is, now you're starting to be like, there's no way you can ever be sure, because you'll never get this into a lab. You're never going to get this under study.
There's way too many points of interjection.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
Variables, yeah.
Like you two guys get high and start having some weird like fucking telepathy or something. You want to put that into a lab and prove it? You're ever going to get that night after that show that they went to, with that perfect combination of fucking drugs and alcohol, with that absolute perfect environment, with a bond, with nobody else around to judge them? You're going to find that in a lab? There's no way, right? So what we can do is we can live and learn when it comes to that sort of shit. Live and learn. Sure. And it's our little secret if we figure something out, because bottom line is we're never going to be able to prove it, even if we try to.
Yeah.
Ain't gonna prove it.
Not all equations need to be provable.
No, and that's somebody said that recently on Rogan.
Yeah, it's I don't know who did, but I just remember watching a math video. I think it was Veritasium probably, and he was. Oh,
that's it, dude. You sent me that one. That was it.
Yeah, and he I think he was just talking about like infinities and the different sizes, and how like there are some infinities that just don't end, and that shouldn't be the case. There should be an end of math or numbers. It shouldn't, according to what is the popular belief, I guess. But math appears to go on forever. Mm-hmm. But you can't fit that, something like that. Like you can't fit something in whatever. I can't remember the exact summary of it all was. But
yeah, there's so many different infinities, right?
Yeah.
It does get confusing because there's different scales of shit. Tons. Like if I see a graphic and they're like, "There's more pixels in this graphic than there are the stars in the entire known universe."
sure.
I'm like, all right. Yeah, okay, because I see shit like that fucking all the time. And he claims, and it's because there's really not that many stars in the known universe, right?
Yeah.
There's more atoms in the fucking something than there are stars in the known universe. Absolutely, because
Sure,
atoms are just so much more ubiquitous. There's an imperceivable amount of them, multiple scales times more than stars in the universe. Obviously, because each star itself is composed of an unthinkable number of them, right? But so the shit like that, it's almost like a false associations.
Yeah.
There are more atoms in your penis than there are stars in the entire sky. Therefore, your penis is a universe in and of itself. What if each atom is actually a star?
Or
Whoa.
or what if the strong nuclear force is actually just a little mini black hole or gravity well? I don't know what the difference is. I'm pretty sure they're the same thing.
Yeah, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Yeah. Fucking like that's what it is. So everything is black holes. You have black holes inside of you. Everything is made and suspended from the super small to the super big is black holes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it does make sense that that's why like the basic idea that the universe itself is a black hole is kind of like, okay,
Yeah.
like
Why not?
when you're talking about the space between all the stuff that we talk about, what's there? Well, that's just vector. It's just a vector. It's just an environment for things to exist in because it's part of the black hole.
Yeah.
There's stuff outside of it, but we don't see it. We'll never know. If you're inside a black hole, do you know you're in a black hole?
Mm.
Of course not.
Yeah.
It would appear just like you're in a universe if you're in a black hole.
Yeah.
You're never going to see outside of it because light from outside could get in.
Yeah, but what happens
Right?
to the light once it gets in? What does the spaghettifying do to a photon?
Would you even notice the spaghettification though?
Well, apparently when you're falling into a black hole, to everyone outside, you will be forever falling into that black hole. So I don't know what that means for you, as if you're the person falling into the black hole, if that means that you fall into it immediately or you fall into it forever and you never actually go anywhere. You're just stuck there forever.
But what if the black hole, what if at the edge of our known universe, visible universe, that was where the black hole, its edge was, and all the stuff that gets spaghettified into our universe through that fuzzy barrier, it just ends up appearing like background radiation from a distant Big Bang.
Could be.
Because it just gets torn so far that all it is just a basic hum. It's just a buzz.
Yeah. Could be.
I don't know.
Maybe the light coming in and gets. Well, wait. But what about Hawking radiation? That's gotta be a thing. So okay, if we're inside of a black hole, then it should be shrinking, but it's appears to only be getting wider faster or bigger faster.
Why would it be shrinking? Because space itself is expanding, so the volume of space inside a black hole should constantly be expanding.
Oh, so maybe the matter is
it'd just be compressing. Yeah. If it appears on the outside to be getting smaller, but the matter on the inside is always expanding, then it'd simply be compressing. That's actually kind of interesting, because would that create kind of like a stasis?
Nah.
its space is expanding, but the rest of everything is compressing it further. So would it just like never expand? It would just stay where it is?
Well, maybe that might be a way of trying to help explain, because like isn't like the second rule of thermodynamics means that everything eventually is going to get cold and die, and it's not going to be able to make any mechanical, production. But it doesn't appear to be. It appears that the entropy is neutral, it's counterbalanced, and that's how everything can be things that we observe and that we exist, or something shit like that.
I didn't understand it to that degree, but I mean, as I understand it, entropy is going to win.
Yeah.
We'll give it enough time, right?
Man. But some people, I think, want to argue that there might not be a big peter out because the entropy somehow is balanced. For everywhere that it goes high, it goes low somewhere else, and then there's just a constant flux of whenever the entropy gets too high somewhere else, it gets really low somewhere else, and it just
I see. So that the entire universe itself wouldn't suffer from entropy, but perhaps like limbs of the universe would.
Yeah.
Maybe a limb would die out while another portion is actually in a different state of entropy.
Yeah, actually, well, maybe eventually it's just been holding on, but eventually, like any other perpetual motion machine, it'll eventually just won't keep going.
That's the interesting part is we always see things linearly, right? I tend to see things as a simultaneous, right? So it's like, do things reincarnate? No. We actually exist, at least in my perception, as a simultaneous incarnation system where there is no, like, there's no, multiple. It's like literally now is the time. Yeah. Really, it is now. And everything that exists now kind of like splits the share of what it is. And however you're configured or equalized is who you are going to be. Much in the same of, like, say, the Big Bang or entropy. I don't believe in the Big Bang, but let's say if I was right, I think that it's going to be more like precipitation of materials from quantum stuff in a vector that's been produced by two-dimensional structures, like quantum stuff, quarks and gluons and shit like that. Yeah. But that, like a mechanical pencil, every time a bit's pushed out the end, there's something else getting pushed in, right? So I would imagine that there's a hot center of some kind, and that hot center is nothing, essentially. It's non-material, immaterial, and it's producing materiality, and it's pushing it out, and it's firing it out, and as it fires out, it just keeps pushing it further out. So, that would be like the things on the edge are starting to decompose. They're decomposing because of entropy. There's literally, and you could call it entropy, or you could just say that there's no more energy going into the
system
excitation. Exactly. Yeah. So everything's getting so far apart as well that it just peters out. What could be an electron in a compressed universe, once you stretch it 80,000 times, it's just a bunch of quantum stuff again. So at that point, the edge of that universe and the beginning of that universe would be touching, kind of thing. And that once that stuff got so entropic that it just turned back into quantum stuff, now it's part of the torus, now it's part of the donut, and it gets its fuel for the stuff in the middle to start producing more nuclei, right? And then it forms a fucking neutron, which then gets fucking decayed into a proton, an electron, and a neutrino, and it just continues. They start sticking together. They start reacting. They start doing their thing. get into like the 3/4 mark, here we are with like cold rock and liquid water and, hydrogen's a gas, methane's a gas, hydrocarbons themselves, light hydrocarbons are all gases, but water's a liquid. We're at the 75% mark or something.
Yeah.
Right. Where it's cold enough to do the shit, but not yet subject to entropy fucking things up. Is there a point in the universe where it's already so subject to entropy that everything's just been annihilated? I don't know. Would we know? I don't know.
It's too far away.
It's way too far away.
Yeah.
Really, even if it's set the 75%, right?
I think there's like this weird lensing thing that happens where it's like, even if we try to look further, there is going to end up a point where it's like we can only see so far. There's going to be a kind of event horizon anyway, from like, we won't be able to travel further then, because there'll just never be anything technologically
there's
capable of doing it.
There's things so far away too that even at the highest speed that you could imagine, because of the expansion of the universe, we'll just never get there.
No.
The universe is expanding faster than we can travel because it's at the other side. And not only do we have the entire universe to traverse, but every AU of space that we traverse, the space gets bigger.
Yeah. So you'll end up just staying in one spot, actually.
At some point, basically, yeah. Because that's the thing, and that's also the thing about time, is that time changes. Time changes as the universe goes on, right?
Yeah, there's different time. Where there's more gravity, time goes by slower. Where there's less gravity, time just flies by.
Well, it's also, we're talking about the three-dimensional space-time system. So if space is expanding, then time is expanding.
Yeah.
So if you were to take, say, a snapshot of space-time and say, okay, that planet is, you could either say it's so many seconds away, or you could say it's so many kilometers away.
Yeah.
And there's a calculation of the kilometer per second.
Yeah.
Right? If you were to take that distance and divide it by 100, now fast forward a few 100 million years, and it's actually, each slice, each one of those 1/100ths is actually greater. It's now 12% bigger.
Yeah.
Because the Earth is, the planet, the whole thing's expanding.
Yeah.
So from the beginning of the universe, in a moment, if we could take a slice of a duration of time, that would be a reasonable amount to calculate. And we could just call it a moment for hypothetical sake. At the beginning, nowadays, that would be, multiple moments, thousands of moments. So when they say that the universe is 13.8 billion years, I'm actually not sure if they've taken that into consideration. The fact that when things started, the universe was a lot smaller. So not only do we have the time it takes for the light to get from the center to the edge, but this time it takes is constantly growing. So you'd have to figure out some kind of a value that you could be like, okay, here's a duration. But that duration then, over a period of time, would have to change. You'd have to constantly be updating the value of like the velocity. The velocity of light would have a different value based off of space literally growing, therefore it taking longer to go from point to A to point B, right? So is this even part of it? I don't know if they've calculated that, but they are super duper smart, so I'm guessing they are on it.
Yeah.
3.8 billion years to me, though, is like, I don't believe that for a second. There's no fucking way the universe is 13.8 billion years. It's just
You think it's way older?
way older. Way older. Yeah.
So then, hold on a minute. Can I take a pee break?
Yeah. Let's take a tenor here. And,
Okay.
yeah. All right.
Oh.
Back in a minute. Ooh, man, that's out of tune like fucking nobody's business.
I love out-of-tune guitars.
You'd love mine.
Mm. Is it a nylon string?
This one is, yeah.
Decent.
Ooh, man.
Man.
Yeah, it's a weird tuning. It's a very specific tuning.
This is the Keith Richards Open G.
Basically, it's the Ani DeFranco Open G. So I don't know if this is Keith Richards used the same one, but
I don't know. That's his like 5-string technique where I can't remember if he took off the bottom E or the top E. I'm gonna assume it was the bottom E to play like a more twangy chord thing, and then I guess that 5-string arrangement is like an open G or something like that.
Oh,
I think.
Gotcha. I'm pretty sure this is Open G. But I don't know if it's the same Open G, like I said he used, but I only know one song in this tuning. And
is it Paint It Black?
No. It's Ani DeFranco.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever heard of her. She's a folk singer from, like, she was very popular in the 90s.
Dope. Is she Canadian?
I don't think she was Canadian. I don't think so. I think she might have been like Boston or New York or something like that. But could be. She toured here, played here lots. Used to do like the Vancouver Folk Fest and, really an early like chick power.
Fuck yeah, chick power is awesome.
Yeah. No, I'd recommend her for sure. Ani DeFranco. And another one of my favorites from back then is Veta Hille. She lives in Vancouver. She's Canadian.
What was that name again? Ani
DeFranco. D.I. Franco.
I would put a D.
I think it's an I.
I'll find it.
Yeah.
There can't be that many.
Oh, no.
So I remember what we were talking about just before we took a break.
Mm-hmm.
I think you summarized what if you're right, your universal model would look like a torus, a donut shape, with nothing in the middle and everything that peters out, kind of just back into the nothingness and then back out again. So my question, does that need to have a beginning, or did that thing just always be? It just always was. But then like you can't think of it having a past, because as far back as you go, it's just like, if you were to say like, okay, well, when it just was in the beginning or whatever, I don't know how to say it without saying the beginning, but it would be not correct, but there'd have to be some point in the universe in its infancy, or it's this version of it, if that's easier. So at its 0 point, like when things were just all the same or whatever.
That's just it, is that you could look at the 0 point of the atoms that we have here.
Yeah.
So the atoms that we have here, they are the product of fusion and giant solar fucking novas, supernovas, right?
Yeah.
Everything past like the first 9 elements are all produced from nova. They're not produced naturally. Or they're not produced naturally by like just basic fusion events. So you get these gigantic fusion events in order to produce things like gold.
Yeah.
Right. So the Earth is the product of multiple series of fusion events, probably. That's the kind of thing where like the 13.82, Earth is 4.3 billion years old. That, to be fair, is the time that the Earth most recently cooled.
Yeah.
Right?
Who knows how long it was hot for?
Well, if the asteroid belt is the product of a collision with proto-Earth, and then proto-Earth got moved out of its orbit into the orbit that it's in, which was once a Zechariah-Sitchin theory, now is starting to actually, I've seen people like mention it for realsies.
Well,
if that's the case, then 4.3 billion years would be the most recent time that it cooled after the impact with whatever that created the asteroid belt. The rest of the solar system then would be way older than 4.3. And then, in order for the solar system to exist as it does now, is that seriously just one supernova? Like, how many supernovas are you going to get out of a piece of material? If you track the atoms that are in our Earth back in history, how many novas do you get? If it's only 13.8, that's only, well, this sun would then be 5 billion years old, right? So you get one more? Like, when this sun was produced and when the elements accreted around it producing the planets that we have now, that's 5 billion years old now. So that only means that we only have one more sun to nova, beginning to nova period for these atoms that we're dealing with that we call our bodies. And all the gold and palladium and all the titanium and all the fucking stuff that's complicated is the product of that nova. We got one nova. We had material accrete, precipitate. It all congealed together. We get one nova. It spits the material back out. It cloud dusts. It all accretes back together. And then here we are. That's all we get if the universe is only 13.8 billion years. That seems like a really fucking dumb story. Like, I think that the materials that we have, I've never done the math because I'm too dumb, but I'd guess the materials that we are working with right now have had several nova. They are the result of multiple novas, I'd guess.
So the idea that a star dies and doesn't restart itself, is that, I don't remember. They always say a star goes red giant, or depending on what the star was before it gets into its death cycle or whatever you call it. They just usually end up turning into a black hole eventually after the red giant or whatever fizzles out and collapses on itself or something like that.
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I mean, essentially, you end up having it burn out. There's probably like 3 different classes of star, and we're only talking about the one that relates to our star, the sun. But no, like I say, our sun, it'll get just so ginormous that its actual diameter will be as big as, like, it would
Earth's orbit.
Yeah, it'd suck us in just because of being too close to it. Because it is going to expand, and then after it gets really, really big, and it converts its light gases into heavy gases, it gets to the point where it no longer has the heat to create the fusion events, because once it's out of helium, now it can only fuse the hydrogen fraction. It doesn't like run out of one before it starts consuming the other, but at the same time, it takes the reaction to create the next fusion. It takes the conditions of the previous fusion to create the next fusion, and once the materials are so heavy, then they can no longer fuse. But as far as I understand it, and I don't, admittedly, but as far as I understand it, the contents of the entire system then start to get absorbed, or at least the nearer planets start to get absorbed by the sun, by the star, until again now it starts to have a mass. It starts to become unstable, like a isotope with a bad number of electrons, where it's just like you fucking fart and the thing will snap, right? And then at that point, I don't know, what's the next nova? I don't really understand it, but no matter what, we'd need to create enough elements that are higher elements in a single nova in order for the Earth to be this, for the universe to be this long. Interestingly enough, also, when I looked at why the universe is 13.8 billion years, the idea that the Earth is 4.3 billion years old has to do with it. I can't remember the exact chain.
It's like,
but they're equivalencies.
Because isn't it because we have lead in our ground and it takes some like radioactive material like so many billion years its half-life to decay into lead or something shit like that? That's what they figure.
I don't know, honestly. I don't know. Like as far as the 13.8 billion though, as far as I remember it, Earth being 4.3 is part of the calculation. It's extrapolated from the date of the Earth itself. I don't know. Honestly, don't know where we get. And again, thankfully, astrophysicists are like, yeah, no, that's just how far we can see, right? The actual universe is like 120 billion years wide.
Yeah,
is what they assume. But
so if it's that wide, shouldn't it be that old?
Well, it's expansion, unfortunately, because it's been expanding the entire time. It's not 13.8 billion years long, and the whole idea of the long part too is just fucking weird, right? Yeah. Like it really is weird when you look at the fact that, like, I love listening to astronomers, and they say, yeah, with the Hubble telescope, we look back, 7 billion years back before. It's like, wait a sec. What the fuck did you just say? You're looking back 7 billion years? How the fuck is that even possible? Right? Like, is there a specific direction you have to look at in order to look back 7 billion years? Or can you just pick a fucking spot in the sky and be like, let's look 7 billion years back? Well, it turns out that there's actually a spot in the sky.
Actually,
it turns out that there's a region that it all starts to expand from, and if we look at that region and we mute out, if we basically just focus backward, mute out. If we look into the absolute pitch shit darkness in the right zone of space, then it's taken light billions of years to get here from there. And we call that, it's not even light, it's just energy. We call that the background radiation, Yeah. And it's weird. It doesn't make any sense.
It's the static when you turn your TV on antenna and there's no antenna signal.
Yeah, and I could see the static being like, yeah, it's just fucking shit, it's something, but you can't, unless you have like a decipherer, all it is static. But for static to be like, oh no, that's the beginning of the cosmos. That's the echo. That's the echo of the beginning of the beginning of consciousness or consciousness. I don't know. Is that a Freudian slip?
It could be. No, but it could be. It could be the first pulse of. All right, it needs to get a little alive in here. This is boring.
Yeah. Do you look at like the origins of stuff? Does consciousness become a variable?
I don't know. It does if you need a story to explain math, I think. Mathical concepts, geometry. I don't know. I kind of do.
Yeah. It's the one thing that I really do have a curiosity above. No, it's cool. Above all other things is whether or not there's an equivalency or there's an analogous part of consciousness in that sort of origination, in the origin story of the universe, and I can't get away from it. I really can't get away from it, and it's only because of the nature of what consciousness is. It seems like it is. I don't know. It seems like it's an example that we have of like the root, you know. It's almost like we're obviously a macrocosm, but it seems like it is in there somewhere. Like, fucking, how could it not be? How could it not be? You can't tell me that in the goddamn universe, everything waited for us to become self-aware, you know? Like, that would be a terrible story.
Maybe that's how hard it is for this type of consciousness can emerge. Maybe it takes a real long time.
Maybe, and you know, that's probably the most reasonable explanation. That it really does take a really long time, same as any sort of autonomy. We can see that autonomy is not ubiquitous in the universe. There's no autonomous entities floating around as quasars or something, or at least we don't know that quasars are autonomous, like they're acting of some sort of a volition or something, you know. We're it. So if we are the root of consciousness, or if awareness itself never arises in the universe until us, that is such a shitty story. But you know, life's just like that sometimes. But it would be a shitty story. There's something too much about that we are built in the image of some type of a prototype, some type of a, you know, again, if the geometry exists within us, if the math exists within us, if the shapes exist, then why would it be only us?
But could we be the ones that are just making up the shapes to fit everything well, and that's how we understand things? Does it have to mean that those shapes exist beforehand? Yeah,
unfortunately. We don't get off on the shapes. Well, that sounded weird because I actually get off on shapes, but what I meant is we don't get off easy with that one. Geometry isn't our perception of the world. Geometry isn't our interpretation. Geometry is real. Geometry is the only actual real thing. I mean, aside from chemistry and physics, geometry, the world over, go to a different planet, you're still going to have the same geometry, right? It is what it is. And that's why it's so significant. That's why it's so meaningful. And people, I was actually thinking about the Tibetans earlier today and their mandalas. You know, there's so many different ways that people throughout history kind of virtue signaled themselves, where they wanted the world to know what they're up to, partially to gain adherence, and partially just to have the respect of their peers. One of the things that they did would then be is they'd share imagery with each other that each other could understand and would symbolize this is where we're at type of thing. And geometry is by far and large the thing that unifies everybody, right? By far. So I posted today on Facebook a GIF of the flower of life being drawn by the geometry that creates the flower of life from a 20-sided.
Is that the one that's like a bunch of circles in like a diamond shape?
No, I believe that's a seed of life. This is the one with like a doop 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 doop, like 12 petals. Basically looks like a daffodil.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's again, it's a ubiquitous symbol, but it's produced by the mathematics that's in 20-sided crystalline shape. The shapes and the patterns, the images produced, things like that symbol, you'll find that symbol is reproduced by cultures the world over. or things like the seed of life, where it's literally it's the six petal flower, essentially, which can be then drawn as like the circles with the concentric circles, or it can be drawn as however numerous different ways, but it's the same thing. It's people trying to show each other, hey, listen, we're really into geometry. And used to be something that was super popular. Nowadays, obviously, nobody really gives a shit, but 2,000, 3,000, 6,000 years ago, if you represented using geometry as some insignia, it was literally to say, hey, listen, I know about this stuff. I'm wise on it, and I'm looking into it, you know.
Oh.
Yeah. And it's complicated.
Well, now if you look on Instagram, there's a whole bunch of people with those designs tattooed on them, and they have no idea why.
Yeah. Well, it's like the Enneagram. I had a guy that I worked with. Do you know what the Enneagram is?
Sure,
It's a 9-pointed star, and it was popularized by George Ivanovich Gurdjieff. And these days, it's considered like a personality thing, you know? So you've got like the 9 different personality archetypes, and, you know, you can roll a die and see if I don't know, though. It's a fucking, like, the astronomy people have taken it over.
boy.
But it's actually a really interesting symbol. And there's also an Enneagram in the 32-sided crystal facet. There's Enneagrams, really, I guess, and a whole ton of them, but I don't even remember what my point was to ask. Religions and geometry. You know, Egyptians were fascinated with it. Greeks were way more fascinated with it than we are. You know, nowadays you're a dork if you're interested in geometry, but at any point in history, you would have probably been plucked out by super smart rich people and funded because you understand things that most people just simply do not get. And intuitively, people can see the relativism between geometry and everything, from anatomy to astronomy, chemistry, obviously. You know, when it comes to stuff like chemistry, it's a little bit more obvious, but
I find it really interesting that, like, electronic microscopes, when they're picking up like super fucking small things, that structures look hexagonal. Like, part of that could be like that's just how the machine interprets it, but then that's how it looks.
That's how it looks. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. No, absolutely. The hexagon or the pentagon, they're the two primary facet shapes, right? Pentagon, I find to be even more prevalent, but it depends on what you're looking at. If you're looking at specifically just basic natural stuff, then it's going to be hexagon. Water is a hexagon, and water's the, you know, kind of the main ingredient in a lot of different things. But it's not just atoms, it's also molecules. And it's not just molecules, but it's just how things fit together.
Yeah.
So everything has to bond. It has to get stuck together somehow. And how things end up fitting because of their receptor spots, their bond spots, is in turn a geometric lattice of some kind.
Yeah. Right? There's actually a technology that I don't know how far it's gotten or if they've given up on it, but there was an idea, I remember, for drug delivery. Instead of just injecting your bloodstream and it goes all over your whole body, you put it in this little round, well, it looks like a little round robot, but it's got a specific shape so that it sticks to this specific region, into the specific whatever chemical chain that it has to. And then once it's there, or you think it's there, you go, okay, let it go.
Huh.
Yeah.
Like little nanobots or something.
Mm-hmm. Very basic. They don't have to have a computer or anything. They just have a specific shape, so they'll only fit in a specific place. And then I guess there's like some kind of like, oh, once we're there, it released the drug. Something like that.
Yeah. And they're totally robotic, or are they biotech some kind?
Who knows? I don't know if you, I don't know you. I don't know if you make it out of some kind of a ceramic or a mineral or if,
Biotech seems so much easier.
or
Really,
metal. Just use a little metal thing.
could yeah, and then just let it hope it sorts itself into the spot. With biotech, though, you can create some type of
Algorithm.
No, it's like a way to actually get into cells and do things, right? Inside the cell, rather than just because you can connect to a receptor, but the receptor, once it's connected, that's it. That's the game. That's the game with receptors. Something smells like it smells because it's connected to a receptor.
Yeah,
and that's it. It doesn't do anything after that. There's no like needle that comes out of proboscis that goes into the thing, and if there's a proboscis and there's entering the cell, and then it requires some type of agrobacterium or some shit like that, right? A fungus to infect.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it's just shaped that way, then you could use damn near anything. Some carbon something. But that's crazy pants, man. That's like nano-sized shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first you have to have tools to machine something that small. Anyway.
Yeah.
So like the best that I've seen them be able to do is cut real nice tiny thin lines in film, like for processors or whatever. I don't know anything else that they figured out how they can produce on such micro scales.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Blasting away atoms until they've got the shape they want.
Yeah. Well,
or 3D printing it or something. If you can print atoms, I don't know. Working on that level is really phenomenal, because we don't usually work. We usually find materials that their atomic relationships are none of our fucking beeswax, and we don't even have to care about them. We just know that material acts like this, melts at this temperature, sticks to this stuff. As far as like the arrangement of atoms, that is not something that we deal with normally with materials. I guess, yeah, because we do, but there's got to be limits to it, right?
Isn't that what they're gonna? Because I part of the future that I see, the future that has cybernetics and whatever. I think one of the things is, how do you transfer consciousness completely from one body to another? You're gonna have to find a way of finding it as a just pure energy. It would have to be some kind of thing, because like it would have to inhabit something that gets excited by that energy. But can that be a thing? Can you distill everything that was material to just a wave?
Yeah, like practically, right? Like some mathematician could be like, yeah, I can figure out the math for that. That doesn't matter. We're talking about reality and practicality.
Yeah,
and can you do that?
How are you going to do that with like a machine? Because you're going to need a material gateway from physical to.
Before we can do that, we can make broccoli, right? So we're at the stage right now where our understanding of vitamins may or may not be accurate.
Right.
Our understanding of biochemistry, 100% not accurate. 100%. Our understanding of our ability to detect the different chemicals that are present in a broccoli, like all of them, and very accurately, and whether or not they're left-handed or right-handed or iso or metric or whatever, not at all very good. Because we have to almost know something's there before we can look for it. Before you can create a test or an assay to detect something in a gas chromatography machine, you have to know what the spectrum of that particular thing is in a gas chromatography machine, so that when you go put something else through, you can go, oh, look, it's silicon, or we have to know something before we can even detect it, right? Yeah. We really do. So if you were to take a piece of broccoli and you were to get the smartest people in the world who know about broccoli to reproduce broccoli, they would fuck that shit up. They would not make fucking broccoli. They would miss stuff. They don't even know some stuff is there. That's the problem with health and nutrition and vitamins. Is if you try to pluck all the good things out of a broccoli and a cabbage and a steak and say put it into a pill, you're always going to be missing things because there's thousands of biochemicals that are present, and at particular concentrations where they might even be adjuvants to other processes, to other things, or we don't understand. There's a lot of stuff going on, and when you got a pinhole perspective of it, so we'd never be able to reproduce broccoli.
Yeah.
If we wanted to, atomically, let alone a fucking person, right? Let alone, can we retain the consciousness of a person? Well, if you can make a piece, if you could take a bunch of atom, like air and sludge water, and create a piece of broccoli that's literally like legitimately broccoli, then we can start talking about whether or not we can, but until then, we don't have a fucking chance. We're so stupid. We are so dumb that we don't even know if fucking saturated fat's bad for us. All it takes is one company with a fucking few $100 million, and we can be derailed for 10 years on some fake scientific bullshit simply because that company wants us to buy more shit. Like, we don't know if fucking sugar's good for us or bad for us. We don't know if eggs or milk this is all lobbyists now, and studies that are paid for by fucking people who want to sell you shit, or studies that demonize something that's paid for by the competitors, or we don't know. Let alone, how do you replicate consciousness? Will it ever be possible? I don't know. I don't think so. You know what I think is possible? I think it's possible is for people to be cloned, and then after a person's cloned, to convince other people that they have their original personality, and as long as the original person's dead, the company's got a very good argument. And that's it. You clone people and kill the original, and now you can make the argument that they're the same person. You can manipulate the clone to think that they're the original person, and you can kill the person. And then,
what if the clone has a bunch of the memories of the original person?
Yeah, that'll take like Cyberlink and stuff, because you can clone somebody today and they're never going to have a memory, right? They're not going to have the memories of the original person.
And they're going to start off as a baby too. Like you don't just clone
exactly of
any
course
age you want.
Yep.
That's the stupidest thing that comes out of those fucking movies and stories. Like, we cloned them. Yeah, but where'd you start from? They're a full adult.
Yeah, of course. And at the same age as the protagonist.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, you don't meet the clone when they're 12. You meet them when they're looking like the protagonist looked when they got cloned originally.
So hold on a minute. Did you clone these kids at birth? What? Yeah. I can't watch movies. I'm just trying to pick them apart the entire way through.
Yeah. Clone a person and an adult walks out of the machine. Good fucking job. That's a miracle.
Yeah.
That's just that's more like a molecular reassembly machine. Like at that point, that's like if you want to make a hamburger or you want to make a person.
Did you ever see The Fly?
Oh yeah.
Fucking love that movie.
Mm-hmm.
So like, would Jeff Goldblum's character every time he jumped between pods be a clone of himself, or would he be his original self? Because I can't remember the science that they try to explain. It doesn't matter what the science is. For argument's sake, for the game that we're playing here, if he jumped, that meant that his physical being was turned into a signal of some kind of energy that went from one pod to the next. So then we're gonna have to assume that
that's teleportation though, or teleporters.
Yeah. So everything is the same thing that did go through it, essentially. Except if you go in there with a fly, you're gonna mix.
When I was like 14, I got into I got into teleporters and I just trying to figure that out. I was really trying to figure that out. The first thing was, how do you convert somebody into energy without killing them?
Yeah.
That was really the thing.
Yeah.
And then the second question was like, do you have to? Or can you just kill them?
I don't like you anymore. I don't know where I sent you, but you're gone.
No. It's that when the next person arises, they are essentially a copy of themselves. Right? They really are. They'd be a copy of themselves. So, and then the original person would be annihilated.
Yeah, but that's just like waking up the next day. You're
Like you'd want to annihilate the original person. I'm saying.
Oh
like
yeah.
You would, because you'd need that data. You'd have to essentially like vaporize them, get a data read from the, because you need to be able to put them back together, and you need to be able to put them back together by some type of an assembly system, right? So we'll be 3D printing on an atomic level before we ever get anything like teleportation, because it really does have to be rebuilt. Has to be rebuilt, and you have to know what it is you're doing. But I don't think the person on the other side is going to be the same person, right? If you kill the original person, nobody ever knows the difference. So it's like, prove that it's not the same person. They're going to have like major problems. Like if you were to teleport across space, you'd have to do like learn language, learn who you are, learn how to walk, learn how to, you're not going to come out and be like, fuck, that was a clever trick. No, you're literally going to be like a big pile of shit mess. You're not going to know anything. You're going to be starting from scratch, right? You're basically a 3D printed adult, but you're not going to know anything, because how could you?
You're just shitting yourself.
We're talking about things that are too subtle to transmit. You can take identical genetics, multiply them millions of times, and never ever 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 have an identical individual from the exact same genetics. You'll never have an identical individual. It's because it's not really there. Our personalities are not really here. They're not. They're an illusion. Hippies want to think that the universe is an illusion and that consciousness is really the thing. I hate to tell you, consciousness is an illusion. The people who we call ourselves, us, are an illusion. And our consciousness, our whole awareness is just it's a figment of our imagination. We don't really exist because you can't hammer us down, and we are not the sum of our parts. If you were to put us together in a machine, it'd be a different person.
Yeah.
You'd still like cilantro or dislike cilantro because that's a genetic predisposition. That's an allele. So there's some things there's some commonalities that you'd share. I'd still have an enormous penis, even if I was a clone. But would I still be as fucking arrogant? That's the real question.
Oh, so we might wanna send you to the machine.
Yeah. No, but really, right?
Yeah.
It's a mistake to think that we'd be the same person.
Yeah.
You can hit somebody over the head and they become a different person.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much.
Or they learn a foreign language.
Yeah. That'd be nice.
Oh my god.
When the Cyberlink comes, we'll see. Elon Musk talks big shit about that, but again, I don't see how it's going to be. We don't understand. We don't have an association yet between the brain and, say, information, right? We can't. If we did, we'd be able to create like old style record player versions of it in our brain, where we'd be able to etch things into the brain like an analog record and then be able to play them back. We don't have anything like that. So if you teach somebody calculus, there's no direct physical reproducible brain synapses that you can then just feed into somebody else, right? If we had that, that would make it doable. But all you can do is connect to the regions of the brain that we're aware of. Try to interpret, like you can learn over time, especially with machine learning. You could interpret that this wavelength is associated with this activity. So the simplest way is to like hook somebody up to it and then show them imagery, red, blue, green. These are all creating these imprints, these wavelengths, these signatures, and then car and dog and fear and sex and just whatever. Get really personal too. Bring in somebody, if you have a subject, show them pictures of their mom, pictures of their spouse, pictures of their children, their dogs, whatever, just to be able to get the really interpersonal stuff, because there's a whole bunch of that shit. And then I guess really hope that the reverse application applies, where you can impose the stimuli and get the same response rather than imposing stimuli and getting a different response, which is also super popular or possible.
Yeah.
You find out what the response is when somebody thinks about meatloaf, and then when you give them the meatloaf response, you'd be fucking lucky if they think of meatloaf, right? They might have some meatloaf related experience if you feed them the information, but to feed them the information and them to be like, I'm thinking about meatloaf, that would be a fucking miracle. And it's just not likely. It's more likely that returning the signal to the brain is going to create a different reaction, unless it's like some real primitive ass shit. Like real primitive ass shit, where it doesn't matter if the signal comes from you or if it comes from the machine. There's going to be stuff like that, serious survival type stuff where, similar to the brain doesn't know if it's dreaming. Could be dream, could be a real life. You as a conscious individual, you can tell.
It should know that it's asleep, because it turns your access to your limbs off so you don't act out your dreams. So it should, by my reasoning, understand that you're...
Mm-hmm. It's just its record of the events isn't tainted by the fact that it's a dream. So recall of a dream and recall of real life comes from the same memory centers. There's no like, I remember this, but it was fake. When the brain recalls, it's just recalling, right? The brain as a whole, obviously it's you are part of your brain, and when you're dreaming, you're dreaming. Yeah. But as far as recall goes, that's why it's the reason why dreams are as tangible as they are, and it's because our brain experiences them as if they were a real scenario, and then remembers them as if they're a real scenario, right? Sometimes people can have dreams of things, and that literally starts to fog their memory, where they'll associate what has occurred in a dream with real life, because again, to the brain, it's all fucking
life.
Stimuli. Yeah, it really is. And it's all stuff that it's experienced, whether outside or inside, it doesn't know. I mean, it does, obviously, but not in the recall. So it's like the end, the recording's the same recording, no matter what. The scribe still picks it up and still writes it down.
Yeah.
Just checking here my notes.
No.
Rocks to RNA to prokaryotes. These are almost just thoughts, right? How do we look at consciousness? How do we frame it? Answers aren't important when it comes to something like consciousness. We're not going to find an answer. We got to find the question. We have to refine our questions so that we're looking at we're looking at a better picture, right? As far as an answer goes, fucking, well. What's that?
So like not like a standard question like why, like what's the reason, because we got to start from the point or the view of there is no reason, it just is. So where do you go from it just is?
Well, reasons like a complicated thing, right? I'd start with like how like what is it in its simplest sense, and in its more complex sense, and what does it do for us? Meaning and meaning and value and reason. Those are real rabbit holes, and probably best asked last. Just because then, if you can discover how something develops, like it's like much like ideas. If you look at an idea, like whether it's the soul or God or spirit or extraterrestrials or anything like this, you literally have an origin. There's an origin to each of these ideas. Ideas, much like technology, were spawned at a certain time and then passed around. Very few technologies arose independently all over the planet. It is a result of somebody developing something and then other people seeing it and getting exposed to it and learning it, right? And same with ideas. So you can really find the root of the idea. Quite often, either the idea's either not that good meaningfully, or its meaning is very specific to the people at the time. And when you look at meaning over time, you can see how meaning changes depending on the people that create that meaning or that interpret it, to the point where we can almost eliminate it. Like we can eliminate meaning and reason and like, but why? Well, why is great when you're high, but 300 cultures have 300 answers for why. But what is it? Cultures have similar answers. And, over time we might actually be able to refine an answer to what is it? What's involved? What's going on? Why is probably like at this point it's just like, I don't know, evolutionary reasons or something, religious reasons, scientific reasons. Pick your reason and run with it. But let's figure out what we're talking about first, right? With consciousness, funny enough, man, it's still open for discussion. Funny enough, you'd think it would be something that we hammered out a long time ago, since it's such a rudimentary thing. Neurology has done a great job. Brain science and stuff has done a great job. I think psychology and shit like that has done a fucking horrible job. Psychologists should be embarrassed of their field because it's a joke. The people who should be understanding the mind are like, I'm pretty sure you want to fuck your mom because of, and you're like, just put down your medieval goddamn fucking bullshit and tell us how the mind works and why I'm conscious and a rock isn't. What is it? How does it develop? What's the history of it? It's like evolutionary biologists are a little bit more on top of it than psychologists, because they have to be.
Yeah.
They have to see why this was useful at the time. Whereas psychologists just to get to read about archetypes and bullshit themselves, and I fucking hate psychology. Can you tell?
Yeah, it's coming through loud and clear.
Yeah. Well, especially too, whenever I meet somebody and they're like fucking just the twisted fuck, they're psychology major. I want to become a psychologist. I'm like, yeah, I know. You're really trying to understand what's going on in there, and I can appreciate it. I would want to too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully you don't help the other people, but
yeah, I feel like it's more about understanding how to manipulate the brain, because it's all an illusion, and illusions can get pretty scary for some people.
Mm-hmm.
So part of psychology is definitely being able to manipulate the patient or the whatever into getting rid of those illusions.
Yeah, it's really that's one of the criticisms I have of medicine in general, is that medicine in general likes to look at symptoms and then address symptoms. And I can appreciate it. Like, you're in pain, or you have a problem, and that problem itself is the thing that we need to look at, and then boom, solve the problem. There's very little like, why is that occurring? Like, what's the source of that? Because finding out the source of it is a rabbit hole that they know that they're not necessarily going to be able to do. Whereas they can address the symptoms. What, you're in pain, you've got anxiety, you've got something. Here's a pharmaceutical for it. Boom, once the symptom's addressed, then the person is no longer suffering. That seems like a win. But whatever's actually causing that person to suffer in the beginning is not necessarily going to be addressed by addressing the symptom, right? So why are you in pain? What's causing the pain? And then in psychology, the same sort of thing happens, where you've got a doctor who doesn't understand the problem because the problem is too complicated, and like, they're deficient in data as it stands anyway, where that person's going to feel as if they were helped if you can simply solve the symptomatic suffering, right? So they're depressed because of, who knows, it could be fucking history, it could be trauma, it could be self-esteem, it could be, but that at the end of the day, you're probably not going to find the reason why they're depressed. But if you give them particular methods of therapy, then those particular methods of therapy have shown to be successful, to have some efficiency when a person is showing these signs of depression, and like, whatever be damned as far as the source. Once the symptoms are gone, then you've at least reached some kind of equilibrium. You might just be pushing against the source, using a chemical or something like that to, antidepressive chemical or something, rather than finding the source and fixing it, if fixable, right? Because it's not always fixable, but in some instances it might be. But nope, throw drugs at it and fucking call it good.
Yeah, it's just bridging a gap.
Yeah. Ultimately, brain chemistry and consciousness are so frigging intertwined. 99.99% of our consciousness is just simply brain chemistry, if not 100%, right? That's the thing, is figuring out that 0.01%, like I was talking about in episode 2. The main difference between humans and rocks that I can tell is volition, the ability to make a decision for yourself or for somebody else, but for yourself. And interestingly, when you look closer, 99.99% of all decisions we make for ourselves are actually autonomic.
Yeah.
So they're not decisions that we're making because of some type of actual, like, spiritual center deciding things for itself. We're making decisions based off of reactivities and conditionings and learning that we've had over the years, I mean, we're essentially like machine learning organisms who start learning the moment that we're exposed to things, and we create what we call intuition, which is things we've learned that we can't quite explain very well, but we still understand. And then we've got our knowledge and our very specific information, things that we really know quite a lot about. But every decision that we make, for the most part, is a result of either what we've learned from our parents, what we've learned from our environment, what we've learned from our culture, what we've learned from almost nothing is like real decision making or real willpower. And the things that are, the chemistry, oops, should I keep hitting this? The chemistry's still involved, right? But the difference is that in one case, the chemistry creates the experience, and in the other case, the experience creates the chemistry. And that's actually a bold statement. Like, scientifically, I don't think that that's true. I don't think that there's any evidence that there is a part of our consciousness that is volatile enough to influence our brain chemistry in that sort of order. I would guess that as far as the official statement was concerned, the brain influences our experience. Chemistry influences experience, right? But I do think that there are these very small points in time when we as human beings have the ability to create our own destiny, to change our mind, to see our autonomic path, to see what our reaction would be if we just let things go, and to change that reaction into something that we choose it to be, breaking a mathematical probabilism, breaking that probabilism and injecting a new outcome that is otherwise imperceivable to the entire universe. The entire universe only perceives of one outcome, and that's the probable one. And then we have the ability to throw a wrench into it by using volition, right? But us and animals, higher animals, would be the only things in the entire universe even capable of doing that. Stars aren't. Planets aren't. They orbit because they have to. Everything happens because it was started. The ball starts rolling, and then everything that happens after that is just a result of cause and effect from the ball rolling. And then you get way down in the universe, and there's these fatty bags of water who appear to be able to control whether or not the probability of the universe as it was given is going to remain that probability or if it's going to change. Right? As far as I'm aware, we are the only people who can do it in this otherwise entirely dead universe. But
what if there's like a massive mass extinction that just wipes out all human beings? Then Earth's got to pump out something in another few 100 billion years.
Yeah. Well, that's just it. And that's like time, right? It's almost like time moves slower when there's people there to observe it.
Yeah.
Right? So if all the higher animals got wiped out, there would be no observation. There's an ability to wipe out living things to the point where there's nothing in the universe observing it anymore. Right? And at that point, time is just like, whoop. I mean, atomics still have to play, but time is a relationship of the observer.
Yeah.
Time as it exists to people who observe it, which is really, which is really what time is. Time's relevant to somebody being there to appreciate it or not. Once if everything goes away, then it's like literally the universe would be running at 25 times until the next observer pops up, and then boop, it gets to slow down again. Because what's the point, right? You might as well just fast forward that shit, because it's just like, it would be almost like sitting by yourself for a while, then somebody else walks in the room, and you're like, oh, okay. I mean, really.
Absolutely.
Yep. No, stars just do not give a shit.
Stop praying to Helios.
Yeah.
Does not give a single fuck about you.
No. No, 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 no. I mean, anything worth praying to wouldn't give a single fuck about you.
It's
The only
why-
thing, the only thing is the donut, is the fact that we're a Taurus, we're an Ouroboros, and prayer is useful, prayer is helpful.
Yeah.
I think it's helpful. Like I think baking soda is good for cleaning, and vinegar is good for cleaning.
Yeah.
It's, it's not the best thing necessarily, but I think it's good for it.
Yeah.
What were we talking about? Marijuana.
Oh yes.
Do you
I don't mind if I do.
The effects of marijuana on our memory.
I don't know. I have a pretty good memory. That dream I had the other night. I still remember it pretty good. That's pretty dope.
I remember everything beyond 5 minutes ago. It's just within the last 5 minutes it really fucks me up. Somebody will be like, "So what'd you do yesterday?" What did I do yesterday? Is yesterday even a thing? Yesterday's weird. I don't know. I did something.
Yeah.
Yeah, did something.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I want to go back 2 years, I've probably got a photographic fucking memory.
Yeah.
Allegory, man. What were we talking about? Something that was analogous. I just read my book here, Baptism in Spirit. This is one of my notes for consciousness.
Okay.
Baptism in Spirit. And I like the idea. It's a fun idea. And even more than the idea, I like the idea that people think it's so important that at some point they created a ritual where they baptize people in water in order to teach you the allegory so that you'll be able to understand when you become baptized in spirit. Right? Yet, if you talk to people who were quote unquote baptized in spirit, I think that there's a lot more confusion as to when that event occurs or what the phrase actually means or whether or not it's really there or,
So we're talking about spirit now.
Well, consciousness and spirit are kind of it's an unfortunate byproduct of consciousness or of spirit. Sorry, whatever you want to call it.
I like to think of spirit as your personal signature to your consciousness, to yourself, and to what you put out into the world. Like whether or not I'm not talking about that spirit that's supposed to be whatever your consciousness sends to, if there's a heaven or whatever. I'm just talking about like when you record it, an instrument on your DAW and you see the waveform, you can have someone play the exact same thing, note for note, whatever, everything, but their wave sign is going to be slightly different. Right? There's going to be slightly micro things that they do with their fingers that just changes it that ever so slightly, that you would need a little measuring device to see it because you might not necessarily hear it in your ear. So that's what I kind of like to think of as spirit. Everyone has, it's your signature. It's the honest you. It's you underneath the persona. It's the shit you can't fake.
Yeah, and it's almost like I like the example that you gave of the guitar because it is the deduction of normalization, right? So if you look at the recipes are identical, and you pull the things out of the recipes, then any variations from like the technical norm or the that's really it. Get two people to play the same thing and then look at what they did in terms of a differential to give them a computer waveform of that song and then get them to replicate it. Now you can literally minus that from each other, and what you're left with, what they gave you once you minus the original is what they are, right? It's almost like it's like a cookie cutter idea that personalities or spirit is a cookie cutter. We usually use that term when we're talking about like houses that are row houses or something that are cookie cutter houses. And it really is a cookie cutter in the sense that we all got one, and it's all. But whether you're a candy cane or a fucking gingerbread man or a Christmas tree, those are definitely different. And yeah, you can still make a cookie. I can make a cookie. You can make a cookie. It's a fucking cookie. It's still got flour and water and egg, but yeah. No, I hear that one. In fact, because I think as a musician and having heard two people play the same shit fucking numerous times, having real world examples of it, and then two, I've played stuff before that somebody said, "Is that one of yours?" And I said, "Yeah, it is. Why?" And they're like, "'Cause you play it like it is." And I was like, "Whoa."
Man.
And I didn't really look at that before, but when you look at Jimi Hendrix, or you look at Steve Vai, or you look at really anybody, Dimebag Darrell, people are uniquely sloppy. They're uniquely off time. They're uniquely bending low or bending high. And it really is that. And if you play somebody else's song, you're trying to play it. You're trying to like replicate these notes and replicate and you're trying to fill in for what they did so much that you're not just doing it and letting it just kind of slop out and slide out. And so people who play their own music tend to be off time better. They tend to be sloppy better. There's almost a signature when you know it so well that it's not about hitting it on it. It's about hitting it off it the right way, you know? Really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, and that was one of the reasons why I've realized young, the two that I couldn't play cover tunes, is because I wasn't that good. I'm not very good, right? I'm not a very good musician. A very good musician they don't care what they're playing. You know,
They just play. Yeah.
They can play and they can replicate. And if you show them something, they can be like, "Oh yeah," and they can replicate the spirit of it better. Whereas all I can do is I can pull out something original, and I can represent it like me, but that's it, right? Like if I try to like pull out a Jimmy or something like that, you can definitely tell, like straight up, right out of the box, that is not Jimi Hendrix. And this guy's not even fucking close to Jimi Hendrix, right?
Yeah.
And that's it. But cover musicians are judged on their ability to perform a song at least as well as the original band, even if they're injecting their own personality into it. But if you know that you're not gonna, then stick to your own music, because nobody does your own music as good as you do.
Yeah.
Even if it's just the fact that nobody else does it. So you don't
unless you're a really shit musician, and then some 20-year-old kid's like, "Oh, I rewrote your song like easy.
Yeah,
this is what you should have done, idiot."
Yeah, I can see that.
Oh man.
And that's, as far as the music goes, that's going to happen anyway, right? Like I've recorded stuff. I've got so many musician friends, and I've recorded a song and shown a buddy, and him being like, "Hey, did you want me to like write a line, you know, for that in the instrument that they play?" And that's their polite way of saying that the like that is actually really shitty. If you want some help, I'm happy to step in. I can see where you're going, and I think I could improve on it. Okay, because I'm not an instrumentalist. I'm a songwriter. So if I put out my own music, the chances that a guitarist is going to be able to put out a better guitar track is 100%. Chances the bassist is going to be able to put out a better bass track, 100%. Right? Because I'm not a musician. This is not what I do. I was a songwriter and I was a song creator. And once I record the shit, it's like the simplest shit required to transmit the data, you know, the lowest common denominator musician is what I am. You know, I put out like the formula alone, There's no fancy permutations of that formula. It is like the A over B, and yeah. But what do you do, right? It's what songwriters do for the most part. I think if you're really, really good at an instrument, you probably have a more difficult time writing a song, because a song is less about the influence of a particular instrument on the song, and it's more about the whole being. It'd be like somebody who is a heart surgeon specifically trying to create a whole body. You know, they'd be so focused on the heart. It's actually, interestingly enough, with mixing, I can tell in an amateur system who mixed a song. Literally, right? So then the guitarist will be like, "Yeah, I mixed this track," and I'll be like, "Ah, I can totally tell."
Yeah.
Funny you mention it, because I can tell.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Or if the lead singer's also the bassist.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I could tell. Yeah.
Yeah.
Quite often guitarists do the mixing, and it's like, so you're a guitar band. Okay.
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely can hear what the guitars are doing in the song.
Yeah.
Not too sure what the bass is doing back there, but the guitars, clear.
Yeah.
Clear as day.
Yeah.
You know, probably turn them down, but
Yeah.
you know, it's really it. You can tell who mixed the track based on who's in the forefront.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
What do you do?
Yeah.
Get somebody else to mix your tracks.
Yeah.
It's like getting somebody else to edit your shit, right? Like,
and hopefully it's a smart guy that's like, when they say, "Hey, change this," you go, "Yep," and then just send them the same track back.
yeah. Does that work
And
for
then,
you?
yeah. Oh yeah, thanks, dude.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very subtle. Very subtle, minor changes were made, but yeah, no, notes were addressed.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's probably much like visual effects in that sense.
Yeah.
Isn't that blue a little bit supposed to be redder? Oh yeah, here, just one sec. Boop.
What do you think?
Yeah. No. Man, that was fun working in visual effects for that, because even in the internals, the artists would do that. So the supervisor's like, this needs to be less something or more blah blah blah. And then the artist would be like, I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. And he'll bring over his lead artist and say, what is he talking about? He's like, this is just, a bunch of, just re-render it and send it back with a new version. And send it back. I'd be like, there's no fucking difference. You can fucking tell, right? But whatever. Again, boss is placated, moving on. Next.
Yeah. Next.
Let's go be conscious people outside of work instead. Yeah. There's so much to do with consciousness, man, that I feel like it's going to be an infinite amount of circling around for all of humanity in order to try to figure out what it is we're working with. Terms, realms. There's so much on the fucking discussion at this point,
No, it's way a ways from our time.
Yeah. No, I mean, because at this point it's like, well, what about the multi-dimensionality? Well, like, what about it? Like, maybe nothing, maybe something, maybe fucking,
What can you do with it? It doesn't really help anything.
Yeah. No, but as long as you don't know anything, then anything's possible, and that's one of the problems. That's why I like to go from the ground up. How are we conscious from the fetus level? Okay, well, I can see the development in the fetus. I can see then we're popped out. And then as we're popped out, there's this path of becoming more aware of the body and becoming aware of the parents and becoming, and it might be simple on one level, but this is, again, to kind of mix in spirituality. this is the path of maturation, right? It's the path of the mind discovering itself, becoming an ego, and then what path it has to take to be able to grow beyond being a selfish fuck. Learn to be empathic towards other people and start looking outside of the self and start looking into community efforts and start to build stuff that'll last after its lifetime. There's intelligence and there's maturity, and they're two totally different things that are constantly, I think, confused together. And really it's maturity that we need to be looking at, because I don't think you have to be super intelligent to be mature. And to be able to grow and to be able to, like, say, understand your familial consciousness as a child, and then discovering that you're an individual, and then discovering that you need to fight for yourself and that you're competing with everybody else in this world for these goals, and then getting to the point where you realize that you're not competing with these fucking people for the goals, because there's, you have to get through this competitive stage, and then once you're through that, you're finally you're like a mature adult. We hit that spot. Usually for men it's like 25, for women it's younger, but a lot of people don't get there. A lot of personality problems and a lot of communication problems that we have with people are simply that they have not matured. They don't realize that this isn't a state of competition between adults constantly. We're not here to size each other up and see who wins. We all lose. Welcome to the story. Everybody's a loser. Everybody's a loser in this fucking game. 100%. And realizing that you don't need to steal the food from another person's hand in order to eat is just part of the process. And we're not that far in to that sort of luxury where, like right now we're in a renaissance where we don't have to struggle to survive. And I mean our civilization, because if you go to other continents, there's going to be dirt under people's nails from digging out grubs so that they don't starve to death. Here we're pretty fucking lucky, but it's a renaissance, right? We get to be dreamers and hippies and philosophers, and we don't have to really struggle to survive, but we come from the struggle and we're going to return to the struggle. It's how are we going to navigate it along the way? And consciousness empathizes with consciousness. That's one thing about it, is that consciousness is empathic. Once it gets to the point where it accepts its own suffering, misery, and demise, then it realizes that everybody else is in that boat, right? And it can go, oh, fuck. And then enter cooperation, stage left. Uncooperative people just simply don't realize they have not matured. They're constantly fighting. They think it's about them. They think the goal in their life is to be something that everybody else aspires to be. To be like on top of a pyramid, because life's a pyramid and the goal is to find the top of it. If life's a pyramid and the goal is to find on top of it, then you're a third fucking dimensional person, and you need to find that extra one that's going to make you empathic. It's going to make you feel things. It's going to make you realize that we all lose, and the best thing that we can do is to fucking lose less painfully and with as much dignity as possible, which means cooperation, figuring this out. It's the same difference between whether or not somebody hears something and they think that you're being critical, or they realize that you're trying to give them an advantage that you didn't have by warning them.
Yeah.
Are you judging somebody, or are you trying to give them a heads up? Well, the perspective is maturity. Whether or not you are a chimpanzee or you're a fucking human. Really, right? Because a chimpanzee will just fight. They'll just fight and fight and fight and fight. And everybody's a competition. Everybody's competition. They'll fucking eat babies to make sure that their own progeny survive. They'll, that's why they philosophize anyway, why they have multiple mates. Lots of primates will literally kill children so that their own children have a better success. I mean, it's fucked up, right?
Yeah.
It's just absolutely egoic, and there's no perception outside of the success of the individual self. My success, if my success comes at the cost of suffering and death of multiple other people, that's just the cost of doing business with me. And that's a fucked up way of conducting yourself, but that's where we came from. That's our history.
Well, it's still playing out today.
Absolutely, all over the place.
Yeah.
All over the place, and it creates what we think of as like sociopathies and pathologies, and people seem like maybe there's bad people and good people in the world. Well, no, there's not. There's just people. We're all on the same fucking boat. There's just people. There's something called a person, and we're all it. And we are either 12-year-old boys or we're 35-year-old women, in our heads. 12-year-old boys are absolute sociopaths. They will harm others gladly just to make a point, let alone for an actual survival benefit. And they're selfish little cunts is really the bottom line. I was a 12-year-old boy. The perspective is horrible. The perspective of looking at life as just a gigantic gladiator arena where you either kill or you be killed. That's the perspective, right? Yeah. You go through school, you're either smart or you're fucking dumb. You're either the guy who nobody wants to fuck with or you're a pussy. Right? It's all just a gigantic competition. And consciousness wants to grow. It wants to evolve. And it inevitably does. It's just a matter of how long it takes. Whether you're 25 or whether you're 65, it's going to happen. Everybody seems to come to, reasonable levels of maturation eventually. It would just be nicer if we were a little bit more on time. And
for sure.
One of the cat's coughing up a hairball.
Well, kitty.
Let's get the hairball on fucking camera, man.
No.
Jesus, that was loud. Probably sorry.
No.
No, and other cultures they had symbolic gestures for maturation, like Judaism and the bar mitzvah or whatever. Here you've got a coming of age and some symbolic rites for it. Some like veil removal of this is the story we tell you when you're a child. Now this is the story we tell you when you're an adult. Most of us are normal people. You're not Jewish, are you?
No.
Okay, then you're in my boat. We don't have stuff like this. We just become, we're 35 one day and we realize we're still children and we got to fucking deal with it.
Yeah.
There's nothing, there's no symbolic, which is where the baptism comes in. Baptism in water and then baptism in spirit. Somebody figured out at some point that symbolic ceremonial gestures to represent things are beneficial, at least for us to maybe identify that they even exist. Do people even realize that they're cognitively underdeveloped? Do people realize that they're underdeveloped today?
No, because because of the competition thing. That's what keeps the masses from actually being able to evolve the consciousness into, like the memes say, into like the global mind or whatever, because it's not supposed to represent one person, it's supposed to represent all of consciousness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the I have one friend who's like super fucking ignorant, but the most generous, loving person at the same time. It's a mind fuck.
Hmm.
But like the main thing I see in him that keeps him ignorant is because it's his like fight. It's his competition. He has to stay, mean and defensive and hyper vigilant, because if he lets it slip, then someone's gonna come and take
Absolutely.
it from him, or he's gonna be the one. I don't think he thinks about it that metaphorically, but he will be the one that takes it from himself, from
Mm-hmm.
becoming too soft.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's the other thing too, is like how you identify yourself is, if you're a nice person, you're too soft.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be a soft person. It's too dangerous out there.
Well, because you're going to be taken advantage of.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like he's very defensive, and
Yeah.
probably from experience,
Yeah.
trauma, past
yeah.
trauma that puts up walls and teaches us how to be super defensive. And I can fully relate, because even no matter how much I grow, I still suffer from cycles of perceptual de-evolution. I mean, like, I've fucking tripped balls on mountains for days, have meditated for fucking days, have like talked to golden fucking gods, right? I've been to some pretty trippy places. But no matter how high I ever got, or how, not metaphorically high, because I wasn't always on drugs, but no matter where I went or how I thought I evolved, I'm still subject to the same cycles of perceptual degeneration, I guess. And it's not because it's unattainable. Maturity is not unattainable. It's because the actual point of being alive isn't to get to point B and then hang out there. Really, it's it. It's to go back from A to B to A to B to A to B to C to G to. It's to explore and experience, and it's like, we try to see things better. We try to get clear to see things better, but in the end, the actual adventure isn't to be clear. The actual adventure is to then lose our vision and then regain our vision and then lose our vision and regain our vision, and really milk the experience. And every time we circle back around, it starts to become a little bit different. It starts to be a broader version of perspectives, or it starts to be, it's like being happy. I don't think the goal of life is to be happy. I think the people who think the goal of life is to be happy are really sad people. They're people that are really sad, and that they have to counteract that sadness by trying to be happy. So they think that you should just be happy. Just be happy. I don't think life's about being happy. Life's really not happy a lot of the time. In fact,
Yeah.
like it's about living. It's about living it honestly, and admitting to yourself that it's not happy. Life's not positive. Life's a huge ass fucking struggle. And I think at the end of the day, that's all obvious. All right. At the end of everybody's life, we're all going to look back and see the same thing and be like, yep. What it comes down to is, what do you have to tell yourself in the meantime? And what you have to tell yourself is almost like the imprint of the state that you're in. What you need to tell yourself is a result of who you are at the time. And if you have to tell yourself that life's great and everybody's great and you're, it's because it's not. It's actually the inverse of that. You're compensating for it. People who strive to be happy are miserable. And I don't think anybody should ever strive to be happy. I don't think anybody should strive to be positive or happy or good or any of these fucking things, because ultimately it's a It doesn't serve you at all. The only thing that serves you is to say, what is it that I'm looking for? Because that's what I'm short of right now. You know, you want eggs. Well, what is it? Is it the calcium or the sulfur? You don't want eggs because the goal of life is to fucking eat eggs. That's stupid. The goal of life is just to live. And if you need calcium or vinegar or fucking, whatever, you're going to pick the food that's got it. And people strive towards happiness and peace if they're tormented. I appreciate it. I get it. But if you're not tormented, then it would be an absurd ambition, because life's just simply not like that. Life's like you fucking lose your parents, you lose your friends, you lose this, you lose that, you lose your fucking limbs, or your mobility, or your opportunities, or your dreams. Let's be real, right? You fucking walk around with a visor, with a blinder on, saying life's great, it's all good, man. You're just in denial, and it's obvious.
Yeah.
Right? It's obvious. No. We've got 30 minutes left. Holy fucking shit.
Did that feel like a long time? Did not for me.
No, it didn't at all, man. Like, honestly to God, I'm surprised. I've got 3 hours and 17 minutes on my recording.
Excellent.
Yeah.
At least 5 or 10 of those were like pee break.
Yep. Yeah, I don't even know if I don't know what the conversation of consciousness is, man, because when I think about it in my own head, it seems pretty simple. Like, we've got chemistry that arises that leads to these particular feedback loops. And whenever I talk about consciousness, the term feedback loop will come up, because that is, to me, what consciousness is a series of feedback loops where you're just simply getting, it's just like a microphone.
Yeah, it's call and repeat. It's cause and effect.
Yeah, well, it's not just cause and effect. It's cause, effect, cause. Okay. Right? So cause and effect would just be a simple thing. The feedback is that the effect is a new cause. Right? So that you output to the world, but if there was no feedback loop, you'd never remember it.
Yeah.
It would be impulsive, and then it would be done. Impulsive and done. Impulsive and done. What we have is we have a way to record what we've done. So we remember those impulses. It's impulsive and done with a memory of it. So the next time that comes up, the impulse can be repeated. It's a lot less energy. It's a lot less resource intensive if most of our reactions are just programmed or just conditioned.
Yeah.
And that's what they are. We're a series of conditioned autonomic responses to things, and then to be able to, meagerly highlight, it's one of those things that if you were to be able to experience a moment of volition in your own life, I don't think the average human will experience very many of them, if any. But if you do experience that moment of volition, I don't know. It's like it'll be a passing moment, and significantly in the universe, it's like a home run hit. As far as development, or as far as what actually is, to be able to change the structural probabilism of the way the ball's rolling is unprecedented. But for whatever reason, we don't have any reason at this point, I suppose, in human evolution to really consider it that deeply. And even in the roles of psychology and in philosophy, it's being dealt with by specific specialists, and nobody else even knows. Right? Whenever I get into academic philosophy, which is not something I do very often because I find it horrible, I am actually surprised at how very, very well and thorough, and there's every good attempt being made to explore the human mind, the human psyche, the human condition, right, with the tools we have. But it's really bad tools. It's like basically we've got like obsidian stone tools, and we're trying to do things that really do require torque wrenches and mag welders and precision stuff, right? But what do you do? One step at a time, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm ever going to be happy with any single discussion of consciousness, whether it's long form or short form. This has been a good one, but ultimately there's so fucking much, you know. My notes, I think we talked around my notes quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna find?
I don't know, but I think my MO is to catch people up at this point. I think, and that's maybe a documentary or something, because catching people up to where we're at as far as how we understand how consciousness works, and you know, I think that at that point, then people then can move forward and be able to at least hammer things out on the same level without the constant time that's wasted in nonsensical fucking pseudo-religious, pseudo-scientific, hogwash, really.
Yeah, we need to abolish religion. Ah!
Yeah, right. No, but if everybody has to start from the same square and move forward, then we all get to the same spot and drop it, and the next people in line start from where we started and end up where we ended, and there's no progress. Yeah. At some point, we need to have it to the people who are at the end of their philosophical understanding, where they've maximized everything that they can understand. They need to pass those on to the next generation, who can then take it from there and then expand it out. Because starting from this way back point, and like where I've gotten in life, other people could get to life, no problem. But this is where we get. This is where it ends. And unless that information's shared or communicated or passed on, then everybody else is just starting from fucking Descartes and Plato and Aristotle and making their way to 2021 as well, or 2030 or whatever it is at that point, right? There doesn't seem to be any generational advance. And I think psychology and, religion is a really good example. Religion might be the better example, because look how fucking slowly it's progressed. In fact, it's in stasis. Like, nobody wants to touch it. The only new religions in the world have been absolute crumbly pants poo, like Scientology that can fuck itself, or even Baha'i that's like, no. It's stunted. We have reached a point where we have maximized ourselves, and now we're just on to better things. Manga, robots, cooler shit, right?
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah. So,
and I want to fucking see a mech warrior before I die.
That'd be cool. I would like to see the first admitted genetically modified person. There's who's the fucking guy who just had to apologize? John Cena?
To China?
Yeah, he just had to apologize to China for saying that Taiwan exists.
Or was a country or something? I can't remember. But
yeah. He said as a country they're something.
Yeah.
Right, but you're not allowed to say Taiwan's a country to China because they're fucking complete idiots, right?
Yeah.
Taiwan is a country. Hong Kong's a country. Palestine's a country. Y'all can fuck yourselves. But I was thinking about it, and it was actually, they were talking about it on Joe Rogan, and I was like, fuck, I wonder if John Cena is actually the world's first genetically modified person. I was looking back because China's not going to tell you. They're not going to tell anybody. They're going to start putting out people from China are literally going to start being genetically modified, and we're not going to know when they started, who's got what. no idea, right? Because they're not going to tell us. So what if John Cena is in fact the first public person who's had his fighting skills enhanced, who he's got pain reduction or pain recognition reduction, maybe he's got thicker bone density because you can modify thicker bone density. Yeah. Is John Cena the right guy? Am I saying the right thing? Is he the MMA guy?
Yeah, he's a WWE guy.
Okay, yeah, because this guy I'm thinking of is like an MMA super fight.
He's a wrestler. I don't think he actually fights.
Oh, really? Oh, okay, then that'd be a bad example. But that's just it, is that we're going to eventually see people start arising that have benefits that have been derived from genetic modification.
I hope so.
Well, guaranteed. If we can live until 2050, we will definitely see clone army. Definitely. Like, there's clone armies being built, and I'm talking 5, 10, 15, 20 million people. Clone armies being created right fucking now.
You think that's what we're gonna see?
I guarantee you, man. I'm not kidding. I'm not hypothesizing here.
It's a lot cheaper than
I'm telling
the robot army.
This is rule 34 of genetics, is that they're already making the babies. Yeah. It's not like they're now starting to create genetic modification. No, they've already figured out how to do larger muscle mass, larger bone density, larger stature, less pain recognition. They've already figured it all out already, and the babies are being born now.
Oh, man.
In 20 years, they have a clone army that's ready to go. I'm not kidding you. This is fucking real world there. This is real.
I really hope so, because then if that's the truth, then one of my favorite fantasy games, science fiction fantasy games, is playing out. Have you ever heard of Warhammer 40K?
Warhammer, yeah. I haven't played it.
Yeah. But well, I'll spare you the details, but pretty much one super being rises as the champion of Earth and unifies all of Earth in one shitty battle where he just brings these superhumans and everyone's dog shit, and they're just like, haha, we win. And then, yeah, it's a whole thing. But if that's what happens now, it would be really. It wouldn't be cool, but it'd be pretty interesting to me.
Honestly, dude, like there's absolutely no reason why they aren't doing it, and there's every reason why they are. Like, by the time the West is like, maybe we should do stem cells, they're like, no shit, 20 years into clone army. So there's nothing stopping them. There's no morals, there's no ethics, there's no money, there's no nothing. All it is this technically possible? Will this technically give us an advantage? If both answers are yes, 100% guarantee it's happening. There's no reason why they wouldn't, right? They'd be stupid to not, and they're not stupid. 100%. We're going to see it, because unless we get hit by a bus and, in our lifetime, at our age, we will definitely live long enough to see clone army.
Well,
not kidding. The Pentagon better be fucking aware. They better be ready. I'm not shitting you, man. You've got way bigger fucking problems than people who are debating whether or not Sharia law should be valid. We got a sleeping dragon there. It's just about to fucking wake up and wipe the map. Flip the table, wipe the map. We don't even have the people. We don't have a fucking chance.
Do you think they would even go as far as to accelerate the maturing of the body too? Like, try to get a 20-year-old in like 10 years?
It's possible, but there are actually side effects for that.
Yeah, probably severe autism. And I'm not saying that to be funny, but like some serious mental development issues, because sure, you can grow the body, but the brain takes as long as it takes for a reason.
Yeah, there would be side effects. There would be side effects. Where the side effects lie and how they go who knows. There's potential for the body to degenerate and age
quicker.
disproportionately faster, and then at the end of that person's essentially their physical lifespan, they just begin to mature into teenagehood, or you could have it so that they're like extremely mature at 12 but underdeveloped. You know, I mean, there's whatever it is you're aiming for. I would think that
Do you think you could program the genetics so that certain psychological traits that's
what you would do. Yeah, that's what you would be going for. And it's this like regular breeding does that, right? If you just breed things, you can breed in temperaments, breed them out. If a dog is too temperamental, have you ever seen The Life of a Dog, or Great Life of a Dog or something, where they bred the silver fox? So your camera's down, eh?
Yeah. I'm plugging it in.
Oh, did the cell phone die?
Yeah, it's I don't know why.
Funny.
It's weird. When I plug it into my computer, it doesn't charge and stream at the same time, I don't think.
Should we wrap it up then?
Yeah, probably. I think you got enough good stuff.
Yeah. I'm gonna have a print screen of you, or like a freeze frame of you here for the last little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, dude, it's been a blast.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me. I had fun.
3.5 hour blast.
Woo!
Oy, 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 oy. And I hope everybody enjoyed it. And if you did like this conversation and you're watching on or listening on Podbean or Spotify or something, hit a follow and you'll be notified when a new podcast comes out. If you are watching on YouTube, hit subscribe and notification bell if you'd like. I wouldn't do it, but if you want to do it, go ahead. And we do have a Discord and Patreon. Links are both in the description. Please show your support, mostly by joining Discord so that we have some bodies in there.
Right on.
Yeah, no ads for this episode, so enjoy an ad-free episode, and you'll get ads in the clips. I'm not putting ads in any of these initial ups.
Yeah.
Nah. Nope. It's too much of a pain in the ass to patch them in later, and I like ad-free podcasts. That's what I like. You know, the clips that are like 10 minutes long, those can be ad heavy.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. Makes more sense. More people are gonna watch the clips anyway, because who the fuck has time for this 3.5 hours shit?
Yeah. It's nice because even though the conversation keeps going, some of the in-betweens or whatever.
Yep. Awesome, brother. Well, thank you for coming out, and we will see you again.
Sure, anytime.
All right. Cheers, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Join us next time for Cycles of Damage.